Well, let me start with determination. Just put together a form so you can start your process.
I'm going to call the meeting back to order. It's time for our contingent from Terra Vista to come forward.
Good evening, board, and Dr. Barr, and of course, our district office staff. Welcome, Terra Vista families. I'm Gabriela Armenta. If you already don't know, I'm the principal at your child's school. This is Janina Stoya, our assistant principal. And this is Tracy Mendoza, our office manager. Who's really behind everything.
Yeah. Who does everything.
So do you want to start with the flag salute? So where are my three littles? Jeremy, Adelaide. Where are my leaders? Come on up. Adelaide. Where's Jeremy?
They hand out, then we shake their hand.
Yeah.
What did she say?
We're good.
Oh, okay. All right, so.
Give them the microphone.
Oh.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Hand over heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hold on. Go ahead, say the rest. Say the rest. All three of you. Go. Would you say after?
I am a California child. I love this golden state. Its mountains high, its valleys wide, its people good and great. I love the dear old pioneer who made us what we are and gave to us this golden state, our nation's brightest star.
Are you here?
No, this is Jeremy.
This is Jeremy?
This is Jeremy.
Congratulations. Thank you for your help.
Shake your hand.
Hey,
Congratulations.
Thank you so much for your help. Good job.
Thank you, sweetheart.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good job.
I have those, actually. I have those.
Just those who like to shake hands with
Nobody else to recognize?
Yeah, we do. Oh, we do. Oh, we do, Pat.
Okay.
We're excited. We're excited. So we do have a sponsor tonight, a generous donation from Mountain Mike's. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good, because I don't. Mountain Mike's is going to give a free mini one-topping pizza to students that have earned an award tonight. So we have, yes, thank you, Mountain Mike's. So we have a few staff members that I want to recognize tonight. First of all, we have 2 staff members that have reached the level 2 Google certification. So that's a ton of work. Super proud of them. They bring a ton of work and support to our site through Google Classroom and helping other teachers and just being that support to anyone on campus like us who need it. So I'd like to call up Karen Firstbrook, who's our librarian. Karen couldn't be here tonight, but she was definitely part of our board here this evening. And if you get a chance, take out your camera and use the QR code because she created that for us, and we have a special little treat on that. So yeah, it's really neat. Something that we did with our cardboard challenge. You can see our city down there. So Godzilla actually came to Sarah Vista. So that's part of that, and feel free to do that with QR code. And then we also, our other staff member is Paula Jacob.
Or do you want me to hold the one that you didn't pass out?
Yeah, thank you so much.
How are you? Thank you for these things. Hold Karen's. Wait, hold Karen's.
And then we have, no, it's okay. We have 4 other members of our community that are part of our parent-teacher organization, and they are incredible. They do so much for us. All the fundraising, all the academic, educational things that they give us based on what they do with the fundraising. And it's 4 people that really stand out and do everything. So, Teresa?
Mm-hmm.
So much. We have thank you. We have Natalie Reynolds. And we have Amy Hassan.
Okay. They have wrestling.
Yeah, soccer. Wrestling. And Julia Stevens. Is Julia? All right, now I want to get to the kiddos. We had 4 students with perfect attendance last year. Perfect, like
Not a day.
not a day, not an hour, not a minute, not a second. They were there full time, okay? 4 students. So come on up when you hear your name. Brea Loney. Benjamin Ralston. Sheldon Petty.
Yeah, no words there.
That's why you want them.
Find yours. There's yours. Take the sticky off.
Sorry.
It's okay. There you go, bud. Here, shake my hand.
And go that way.
Go down.
Yeah.
Shake everybody's hand. Okay, the dot here. Okay,
And
April.
April Villanueva. Okay. So the rest of the students that I'm going to call up, okay, so everyone knows about the state testing. And 3rd through 5th grade students, they take this test, and they have different levels that you can score at. So these students that we're calling up, it doesn't matter what level they were at, they have moved up at least 1 level from year to year. So we're honoring those kids that have made progress, no matter where they started. So it's 1 through 4, even if they were at a 1, they either jumped 1 or 2 levels up. So we really wanted to honor those students publicly in our community to show that it doesn't matter where you're at. You can just keep trying, keep working, work hard, dedicate yourself to school, and you'll get there. So we just want to honor those kids that really put in the effort and actually moved up that level. So we'll start with Cass for English Language Arts. So instead of clapping after each person, we'll just wait for the end clap, and then you guys can call the names up. Okay?
All right, yeah, that'll be.
Easier so I don't dig.
Okay. So actually, this is for mathematics. For Level Up, Raquel Hernandez. Nicole Hanna. Tyler Trites. Emily Harvey. Bella De Leon.
They're all studying.
They are, that's right. And Wesley Barber. Luis Arroyo Jr. Frank Marlowe Jr.
I saw him. Frank. He's right there. He's right there.
Oh, there he is. Good job, Frank. And David Sotelo Jr. Okay, and for English Language Arts, Level Up is Jackson Wolf. Hannah Tart. Congratulations. Rihanna Shibans. Madeline Fuentes Rosa. Congratulations. Yesenia Rocha. Very cute. Congratulations. Proud of you.
Congratulations.
Genesis Perez. Good job, Malachi. Support your sister. Alice Williams.
Good job.
Ashley Valdez.
Hey, do you like unicorns?
Robert Brendan. And Daniela Pineda Herrera. Elisa Hernandez. Congratulations. Lily Cortez. Max Brubeska. And Ezekiel Esquivel. Elisa Gutierrez. Congratulations. Denise Huerta Ortiz. Tomas Ogas. Sorry.
You have to
Jasmine Palacios. And then last but not least, these students leveled up in both language arts and mathematics. So two subjects. Gabriela Gutierrez. Kaylin Marquez. Jacob Sekovic, sorry. I just talked to him today. And Alexander Andrzejewski. Okay. Congratulations to all of you. Okay. I have one more, and this person doesn't know, so it's a surprise. So I don't know if you guys knew, but I was out for about 3 weeks on and off. And someone had to really step up to the plate. And she really did. I mean, Janina Stoya here, my vice principal, halftime. She really did step up to the plate when the craziness was happening, and I just want to thank her from the bottom of my heart in front of everybody that she's definitely, wow, golden, and I love her, and she's, if you need anything, definitely can go to her because she's running the school too. So, all right, I just wanted to honor her for that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's hiding back there.
It is. I had to hide it because I didn't want her to see it. So thank you. And thank you, board. Thank you for everything.
Does she come for a minute? Oh, do I get to put on that?
Thank you.
Does she get a mini pizza?
Does what? Heck yeah. Yeah, I get half of that. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight.
Or you can stay.
Take the coat. Thank you. Thank you.
How you doing? I'm doing great, thank you. Have fun in the rear.
Corralling those Broncos?
I am.
If anyone needs a translation, our translator is in the back. Okay, thank you. Closed session announcements. The board affirms the acceptance of the resignation of a director. There was a motion to approve the plan for a special ed student. And that's what, let's see. Okay. Rest of the housekeeping, is that the meeting is being recorded there, and the camera is located to the audience's right. Members of the audience are invited to address the board on any subject on tonight's agenda when that item is being discussed. Members of the audience during the regular board meeting may speak to the board on any subject not on the agenda tonight when I open it for public comments. To help the board conduct the meeting more efficiently, we ask that people who wish to speak complete a speaker's card, present it to the board clerk prior to the item being discussed, wait to be called upon, and come to the podium and state your name. Individual speakers will be allowed 3 minutes to address the board, and the board will limit the total time for comments to 15 minutes. With board consent, the president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation depending on the topic and the number of people who wish to speak. The president may poll the speakers to find out if they are for or against a particular issue. Speakers are advised that their speech may be open to civil liability, that is defamation if that involves a complaint against staff. If you have a complaint, please see the complaint officer, Ms. Sanchez. Okay, on to the approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion that we approve it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? All right, public comments.
One, yes. Miss Angela Higgins. Good evening. How are we doing tonight? Right? There you go. All right, there you go.
So I just wanted to take this opportunity on behalf of HESTA to say thank you for your service. You know, I'm sorry Peter wasn't here to hear this tonight either. It's in a time when we bend over backwards to get people to vote. It's, you know, we very much appreciate you stepping up and offering your service to our school district and giving your time. And we wish you the best in all your next adventures. Thank you.
We'll be recognizing the departing board members on what day?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Higgins. Appreciate the comments. Just for the public's information, at the next regular board meeting, which will be on December 18th, that's the reorganizational meeting. That'll be the swearing in of new board members, and it'll be a time when we ask the departing board members to come to the board meeting and be recognized and thanked for their service. They won't be at the dais. Newly elected board members will be at the dais. The term of office begins on December 7th. So the last day of the service of the board members who are stepping down from the board will be December 6th. It's the first, December 7th is the first Friday of December, and that, according to the elections code and education code, is the first day of the term of school district board members. So in fact, the newly elected board members will be taking part in a superintendent selection process beginning that day, December 7 and 8, in fact. And the next Friday and Saturday, 14 and 15. So they will be getting a little initiation by fire, doing one of the most important tasks a board can do, which is the selecting of a new superintendent. So the question is, those will be closed session. The December 7 and 8 will be closed session only interviews. They are confidential. So they are not open to the public. They are only for what will be then 5 seated board members. First term for those newly elected board members, first day of the term for the newly elected board members. And 7 and 8 and 14 and 15 will be closed sessions interviewing candidates for the position of superintendent of the Hollister School District. Then a week or so later, On the 18th will be a regular board meeting like this. We will do a ceremonial swearing in for the newly elected board members. And at that time, we will be requesting that board members who have completed their terms come back to the meeting and at the very beginning of the meeting be recognized for their service. So that's the schedule of events for the coming weeks.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll continue on and start with reports. And Mr. Tila is going to tell us what he has to say about traffic around the schools. It's something we hear by social media. And it's a challenge. The schools weren't designed for parents bringing their kids to school. They were designed to drive up in a bus and let loose 50 kids.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Laura. John Salia, Director of Facilities. I'm here before you this evening to provide you a report or an update as requested by the board at the September 25th board meeting. You direct the staff to assess the current status of the student drop-off, pickup, and traffic conditions at Gatlin Hills, Hollister Language Academy, Calaveras Accelerated Achievement Academy, and also the R.O. Hardin Hollister Prep School sites. Staff assessed the status of those schools with the site administrators, as well as to discuss the current conditions and look at possible improvements to the conditions there at the sites. What we found in the assessment is there are some common factors amongst all three of these sites, and I've got them highlighted here for you. Each school site houses 2 schools or programs. So again, HDLA shares campus with Gatlin Hills, Hardin, HPS, and Calaveras and AAA. Gatlin Hills, HDLA, and R.O. Hardin HPS have the largest enrollment in the district right now, those schools. The board has approved both of those schools to also increase enrollment in future years. As well as Gatlin Hills, HDLA, and Calaveras AAA are located on roads that are not fully developed. They're still a little rural, there's still farmland adjacent or directly in proximity to those school sites. We also found that the school sites were experiencing more traffic congestion at the end of the school day when parents, guardians, or care providers are coming to pick up the students versus the morning. Some additional findings here was from our assessments at each of the school site. We found that we have parents or guardians or care providers arriving at the school site somewhere between 45 minutes to almost an hour before school lets out. This is causing a lot of vehicles to block access to the school parking lot as well as traffic on the roadways that are adjacent to the school sites. As you know, many of these roads are very busy in front of our schools. There are limited street parking sidewalks on roadways adjacent to our schools, again, referring back to some of the rural roads such as Buena Vista and Santa Ana. We found that vehicles were parking illegally and violating traffic laws. Parents, guardians, and care providers are parking and walking into the school site to pick up their child after school versus pulling in to have them get directly into the vehicle. Our school parking lots, they just weren't designed to accommodate the amount of vehicles that we see today. We also assessed and observed that for the amount of vehicles, didn't seem to be adequate enough staffing to assist with the operations as they're currently today. And again, traffic conditions seem worse in the pickup as compared to the drop-off. So again, in our conversations with each site administration, we talked about possible suggestions, and we kind of prioritized those suggested items here for you. So our priority 1 suggested improvements would be to review the school start and end times, which we've already started doing that. I will tell you that each one of these schools has staggered beginning and ending school times. There may be an opportunity to look at that in the future as a possible improvement, but they currently are staggered. The degree could vary though. Send home letters or informational flyers discussing the drop-off, pickup procedures and safety in general, which majority of our schools have done. They do it at the beginning of the school, and these schools in particular have sent home these letters to the families, reinforcing the safety and the traffic conditions at the school. Parent all call or just a simple reminder explaining the drop-off and pickup procedures. Possibly creating a school parking and access map that can identify pickup drop-off locations. Possibly conducting a parent meeting specifically on this topic. Whereas we can invite also the school resource officer from the Hollister Police Department to help assist us with helping to educate our parents on vehicular and pedestrian safety, as well as additional staff to assist with just your day-to-day operations.
John, can I ask a question? Sure. So, you're a dad, right?
Yes.
In your opinion, is there something in any one of the school sites that procedurally actually could be done? And what I'm talking about is, I mean, 20 years ago, when we were dropping off children at Hollister Presbyterian Preschool, it was the same issue. So they figured out if the people that work there get the kids out of the car, put the kids in, you know what I mean? It sped things up. That was a procedural thing that I assume solved the problem. Is there anything like that you see that, I mean, if you could wave your magic wand outside of widening the streets, bigger driveways, whatever, but procedurally, is there something that you see that we could do? Pick your school.
If you wouldn't mind, could I finish the priorities, 2 and 3, and then I could possibly
Okay.
answer that for you? Would that be okay?
Sure.
Okay, great, thanks. Some other suggested improvements, priority 2 would be to close the school administration offices during certain end times. We're finding that people are coming in to conduct business during those times, whereas they're having a hard time finding a parking spot, let alone get into the school parking lot to get into the office. So again, informing our community that the school offices would be closed during those periods of time. Again, these are just ideas and suggestions. Close access to the school parking lot until dismissal time. Designate more drop-off or pickup locations at the school sites or in surrounding neighborhoods. Introduce walking school bus program, which is it's a national program that is very similar to a student waiting at a bus stop today. There will be identified school bus stops located throughout the neighborhood of the school. And students would go to a designated bus stop and wait for a parent or a guardian that would lead those students, just like a school bus driver would be picking them up in a bus, and would walk them all to school. So it's kind of a safe zone. They wait for the group, and then they would actually all walk to the school together.
Do we need a staff member to take them, or are we thinking they'd be walking along?
These programs nationally are pretty much self-supported by parents and PTO members and so forth. So again, reaching out to our parents and seeing if the parents would be available to do this on a maybe a as-needed basis or a permanent basis with some types of substitutes in case they cannot make that day and so forth. But there's programs out there like that. As well as work with the city and county to regulate on-street parking and traffic movements, which, as you know, we've been trying to work with them on those items. And priority 3 would be to more extreme measures or suggestions would be to limit the amount of classes per grade level, possibly relocate programs or schools, offer busing to some of these schools, as well as city county road improvements such as sidewalk, curbs, gutters, and so forth. Trustee Bernowski, to answer your question, from my personal view and assessment of the sites and working with the site administrators, I think the biggest problem that we're facing is the parents coming too early to school to pick up their child, and therefore is creating the backlog of the traffic, which is flowing out into the public right of way, which is also creating traffic conditions and hazards out in the public right of way. Some of these suggestions we could work by communicating with our parents to reassure them that that their students, their children will be safe with us. They don't need to pick them up exactly when the bell rings. You know, to encourage the safety of our students and our staff, as well as themselves. We want to make it as efficient as possible, but it's very difficult when there's already 40 cars backed up 45 minutes before the bell gets out. And so just having that understanding, we've been trying to, at some of the school sites, for example, Sierra Vista, we tried to communicate to the parents that we wanted to use the analogy of an airport. That if you go to the airport to pick up a friend, a family member, you can't just park at the front door and wait. You have to keep going until that person is there and ready to be picked up at the curb. Again, we don't have that type of enforcement at our school sites, but we want that type of operation that would be helpful and more beneficial. So if there's any way that we can communicate to them to have them understand the flow, if the flow could be consistent versus stagnant, it would definitely help everybody, and it would create a much safer environment at the school.
So that would be a procedural thing that I think would probably, help. Again, if the principal were out there, would he or she have the enforcement authority to do that? I.e., hey, you're disobeying the person in charge, and therefore you're being disruptive to the learning environment, and that is a chargeable offense. I mean, is it in the realm of possibility?
No, we don't have that type of enforcement authority.
Well, hold on, any educator has the ability to say, you're being disruptive to the learning environment, and that's a misdemeanor.
No.
Yeah.
But it's not the learning environment.
We have, this is, and I want to be perfectly clear, this is not all parents. And it's a small number if we really look at each of the school sites. And so it's really just communicating the message of the safety and the operations. We have had principals, so they probably do this quite frequently, interact with our parents that are parked in parking lots or parked illegally and that type of thing. And sometimes it's not always pleasant. And so, the reality is that we want to communicate a consistent message. We want it to be very clear in regards to what the operations are at the school sites. The bottom line is we want to create the safest environment that we can for our students and our staff. And we do ask many of these individuals to work with us, and we have been successful on many occasions. I just believe that it's going to truly be a dedicated, consistent communication. We've already gone through half the school year for the most part, so it's not really a surprise anymore, but I think that we can actually improve it in many ways. I would also recommend, and again, getting help from our local municipalities, the city and the county, in regards to some of the street regulations, time parking, even limiting certain types of movements, such as left-hand turns, right-hand turns during certain times. These are all things that can be done with cooperation from the local municipalities. I will tell you though, we have street regulatory signs currently today that say no U-turn, no stopping, and it's happening anyway. So it's going to take help from the local authorities to also enforce those traffic laws. you know, we can only handle what's in our parking lot. If it creeps back outside the parking lot onto the public right of way, then it is another jurisdiction that would take over for that.
But we have to give we have to give our parents an out. It's just, you know, and it's educating them, like you said. It takes time. It's just, you know, the high school, you had to map everything out. Okay, here's the way you come into this pickup and drop off. And I mean, you just have to do that. But anything on our property, if they're starting to back into our parking lot, there has to be somebody out there that we have to dedicate to say, you know what, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to move. You can't be here. And if they refuse to move, then we call the police. You know, but anything, like you said, there shouldn't be anybody, if our policy is, you know, you can't be out here more than 15 minutes before the end of class, or 10 minutes. I don't know, whatever we decide works. You know, and if they're parking and they're showing up 45 minutes, I'm sorry, you can't park here. You have to, you know, there just can't be, there has to be a designated time. You have to just streamline and you have to enforce it. That's the only way that parents are going to have to learn to work within the system. But it's part of, I mean, it's gonna take a lot of work, but I think, like you're saying, it's working with the city and the county to help us on their end, and we do what we do on our end. But it's that consistent communication, but we have to give them the ability to map things out and tell them what system they're gonna have to work with to ensure the safety of all students.
This is reminiscent in my brain of the problem at the airport, the same problem, picking up and dropping off. And they solved it with cell phone locks that happened to be not lots, but on the street, away from the airport, but within 5 minutes. I don't know if anything can be done with that concept or not.
Well, they're residential. I mean, it's public parking. You could park wherever you want on the street.
Right, but when you go to the cell phone lot up at San
Yeah.
Jose,
Yeah, I've seen that.
it's on the street.
But we don't
There's
have-
no lot that you go into, you just sit there and wait for your party to call you.
Right.
And then I'm usually within 5 minutes of getting there, and your pickup can, the other thing, a long time ago, someone told me that, she taught her daughters that when they went by grandma's house to drop grandma off, they always told grandma to tuck and roll. And so that always had a really funny connotation in my brain. And I thought, okay, in the morning when kids come to school, you can drive by, you can tuck and roll and throw them out the car and somebody will catch them on the other end. But, you know, it's a matter of, like you said, teaching people what's the procedure, how should we deal with this, and how should we get there?
And that included staff, let me tell you, because at the high school, even if you're a staff member, if you're doing something illegally, you're gonna get a ticket. There's no more warnings, there's no more.
City ticket?
Yes, ma'am. And I mean, our officer, she is doing her job. And unfortunately, if parents are gonna be that defiant and that insubordinate when it's, you know, a principal that's looking out for the best interest of all of her children coming and leaving school, and they wanna, you know, do what they wanna do and focus in on what they want, we have to take action. And so they have to know whether it's at a communal, you know, here you go, people, this is what we're doing, and I think it needs to be presented in that case, you know, when you're back to school. But I think it needs to be in that environment where parents have to be aware of, these are gonna be the consequences. We need to do this, we all need to be a part of the solution. So, and if there's gonna be anything outside of that, then there has to be some consequence to it. So that's how we learn sometimes, you know? You can either comply and flow, or, you know, but that other part that needs to be reinforced, we need the backing of the police department or the sheriffs, depending on where we're at. But yeah, we do need to be able to get this under control. I think we need to
So-
partner up.
This is so the direction are we giving staff is to have law enforcement
On the
be the
streets.
primary way to solve this?
If it's on, no, I mean, we have to look and see what's work. As far as start time and end times, when you have two, like you were saying, the congestion, you have the two schools. So you really have to coordinate what works. So you're giving the opportunity to the parents, so you're not showing all up at the same time, you're not, you're not causing the congestion yourself.
No, what I'm getting at, so he's looking for direction from us on what we want him to do. What I want you to do is go back to your priority 1, priority 2, priority things. What really is in the realm of possibilities and narrow it down. I mean, I don't think that we should solve the problem. I think that you and your staff should say, here's the solution we want to come up with, because again, some of those things I just don't think will work. Like, we're not going to widen the streets, we're not going to put in sidewalks. I don't see that happening this year. But some of those things, like getting law enforcement involved, if they are willing to, makes sense to me. But that's, the direction I want to give you is tell us what the solution is.
I have 3 cards, so is that okay for the parents to come up and
Yeah.
speak? Okay. Yeah, the first card was Angela Higgins.
Hello again. So we thought we thought the suggestions, or some of them were great suggestions. I know the teachers at HDLA and Gavilan Hills were very concerned when their start and end times were getting condensed. They still are, they've gotten used to the chaos, but rainy day is really difficult because all 1,000 students are in the MPR and get released from the MPR. And they had a code red recently, and they had to quickly get those 1,000 students into the MPR for safety, and that was difficult. So that needs to be taken into account too when we talk about start and end times. The week before Thanksgiving, R.O. Hardin and HPS had very similar release times because of the early days for conferences, and that was pretty much of a nightmare. I happened to have afternoon parking lot duty that week, and I almost got run over 2 times. 3 was kind of sketchy, but 2 definitely. Unfortunately, teachers can only do so much on yard duty because we aren't trained to direct traffic, nor should we be, and that often becomes a traffic control issue. Closing the school office makes it difficult for schools to partner with parents. HESTA cannot get behind this option at all. A lot of times parents are there, to pick up their children, and they're doing a twofer with that pickup and need to get back to work. So we need to keep that open. Closing access to school parking lots would just move the issue out onto the streets. Those parents who want to be first will just be first on the street rather than at the parking lot. It doesn't necessarily alleviate the congestion. However, 2 of the schools have bus loops, and since we're not busing very much except for special education right now, they can be used for the smaller programs. Example, Gavilan Hills could be released at the bus loop, and then AAA can be released at the bus loop. For R.O. Hardin and HPS, it's possible for HPS to be released onto South Street where the old district office used to be and those portables there. There's also would be a great way for the parents to reach their campus rather than making it dangerous when they want to get to their office and our students are being released. That often happens too. I'd very much like the district to consider busing. We lost busing at right about 2004 when Judith Baranti, then Superintendent Judith Baranti, ended it for No Child Left Behind. It was to avoid the issues that came along with program improvement. And our schools became extremely segregated at that point because people just went to their neighborhood schools and our town happens to be pretty segregated. If we consider busing, we can also, deal with that issue at the same time. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Cassandra Sanchez.
I've addressed each of you via email. Some of my comments have been quite scathing. First off, I'm not representing, but my son goes to HDLA. When the combining of the 2 schools occurred this year, it created an immense problem with the pickup. You have over 1,000 students getting out roughly at the same time. You can't close the parking lots, as the speaker said before. You're gonna put all the traffic that gets there at whatever time onto the street. Parking has gotten somewhat better, but as of yesterday at 2:55, when I was leaving, the traffic was all the way back up to Airline again. So all of these suggestions are great ideas, but none of them are realistic. You're gonna have bad drivers, you're gonna have bad parents. They're not gonna follow the rules. As far as law enforcement, it's not gonna happen. There's 2 SROs for the school district, 1 at the high school. They cannot be out there all the time giving tickets. HDLA is a mixed use, it's sheriff's department on the north side of the street, on the south side, which is where the school is, it's the city jurisdiction, and it's also controlled by CHB. I've contacted and made complaints to all 3 jurisdictions over the last year and a half, and they're not out there issuing tickets. It's not gonna happen. So all of these ideas aren't gonna solve the problem immediately. If you continue to look at the growth, each of these classes at HDLA are gonna increase by 100 students from 4th grade down every year until they reach 8th grade. The school's already at 1,000 students for the letter that went out when the combination of the 2 schools was sent out this year. So I don't know how you're gonna put this many more students in this small of a campus. The principal's already overworked with 1,000 students. She's out there trying to control traffic. She can't. She's not a law enforcement officer. You can't have these people doing that job. So for your priority 3 level, which goes back to showing, reducing student size, that's probably the best thing that you can do at this point. Until new schools are built or you get the roads widened, which isn't gonna happen anytime soon unless the city approves the planning that's in potential talks to increase housing from where they're gonna extend the dirt lot on the east side of HDLA. There's proposed talk of extending Memorial from Meridian to Santa Ana. And there's supposedly gonna be access directly to the school, but that's not gonna happen for years. So I realize there's no immediate situation that you can do today, and maybe it's not the board's decision, but it's the school district's decision. And I realize you're in a difficult place, and I'm here mostly just to vent and express my frustration as a parent.
Go ahead, finish.
I think you're gonna really have to look at the tier 3 levels, maybe reducing the numbers of students at the schools. I can't speak to the other 2 schools, I'm here only for HDLA and Gavilan. Unless you're willing to have the 2 schools split again and have 2 staff members and have 2 principals control and then again change the start and stop times, nothing's gonna happen. You can't widen the roads. You can't get the police out there all the time to do the job. You're not gonna get bad drivers to correct their behavior. You're not gonna be able to close the parking lot or close the office. So the only thing that I think that you really can do is to decrease the class sizes until you can come up with another solution.
Thank you.
I have one more. Betsy Lemay?
Hello, board members. My name is Betsy Lemay, and I actually hadn't intended on speaking tonight until I saw one of the suggestions related to staff. As a teacher, we are asked to form relationships with our parents. But it's really hard to ask us to have great relationships with our parents on one hand, and then, try to deal with, be a police officer and deal with bad behavior on the other. I had to, by the grace of God, my principal took me off of that duty because I told her, I can't do it, Monique. Thank you for taking me off of that duty. I mean, just the other day, someone was dropping off in the handicap, sideways, blocking it, and I happened to pull up, and I said, you can't drop off there. The parent told me that was my opinion. And I said, it's handicap parking, but that's your opinion. I had to drive away because I had nothing nice to say after that. So I'm just gonna ask that one of the suggestions not be put on the staff as the teachers, because you can't have a relationship and then be a police officer at the same time. Thank you.
So again, what I get back down to is what is in the realm of possibility, and maybe it's nothing can be done, and we have to admit that. But I guess I want to hear from staff, or come back to us and say, here's really what can be done.
I mean, I don't know what it is if you went out with staff, you went out with the principals. And so with some of the conversations that you had with the principals, are they looking to the board to finalize a decision? I mean, because we give a lot of control to them to decide start and end times, you know, certain specific things that will help address the concerns that they have, and only they know what those concerns are at their site level. So for it to come to us is because they don't know what to do, or I guess that's, I mean, we know there's an issue. We all receive, you know, many concerned parents' emails. And so for us, that is, we have to take action. When we get a letter from a staff member or a parent, okay, there's a severe concern. We all know there's a severe concern out there. So now how do we address it? How do we move forward? Who do we move forward with? Who do we need to partner with to ensure that our kids are able to come to school? We know we're gonna have more growth. We know that cutting back, where are they gonna go? So they're gonna impact one site or another. So, and if, you know, we're fighting to get students back, you know, that are leaving our district. So if we become more attractive, we're gonna need to start putting portables in different sites. That means more students, that means more cars, more people. So logistically, we have to really take into consideration, you know, even, I mean, this whole conversation about the new school and what that whole logistics of, you know, just the pickup and drop off, because we're thinking, oh my God, you know, we don't want to build a new school and have that one be chaotic as well. I mean, granted, we're in a rural community, we're surrounded by residential homes. It's not uncommon. I mean, you know, if you live by a school, people are gonna be parking in front of your house. People are gonna, it's just how it works here. It's always been that way. But I mean, our schools certain ones have been in that area for years and years. So to now try to restructure and think smartly about a route to drop off and pick up, I mean, we may need to really focus in on each site to really determine what that looks like. And with the expansion and the growth, we really need to start really assessing that critically for each site and really determining what works, start times, end times, drop off locations. We have to really help our principals logistically figure that out. And hopefully we can get the city and the county on board to help us with the process. But I don't see us doing it any other way.
I have one comment. Obviously, there's no answer, or we would have already implemented it. And in a scientific method, you would make a change in the experiment and assess it, give it time to settle in, assess it, see if it worked. Well, you could maybe make one change at one of the two schools and change over there, and then you see, okay, which one appears to be more effective? And if one of them is you know, dead ringer, that this one's been, oh, why didn't we ever think of that before? Then, okay, then we'll implement that at another site. But there is no answer. So you can just keep trying the variables and seeing and if you can make a difference other than, I mean, there's a lot of uncontrolled variables. So that it's the best, we have to look for the best solution to the best site, and that's just gonna take
So is
practice. There's no answer.
the conclusion that we want John to come back with, look, this is what we're gonna try?
But I think that's an administrative decision, not a
That's what
board
I mean,
decision.
no, that's what I'm saying, that we want John to come back and say, out of all these things, we discuss it, and this is what we're gonna try at RLR, and this is what we're gonna try at HCLA. Is what we're gonna.
May I weigh in a little bit here? I appreciate Mr. Tilia's review and the presentations, and as well as the parents and teacher representatives. I think in my opinion, it boils down to those things which you can control and those things which you can't. And one of the things that is going to be very difficult to control are the enrollments at these schools for two reasons. The board some time ago chose to place two schools in one campus. And in each of those cases, one of those two schools is a district-wide school. I would guess some large percentage, 90% or greater of the enrollees in that voluntary program are delivered and picked up by individual cars, parents, caregivers, et cetera. So that exacerbates the problem of having a lot of cars. The second thing, and I just spoke with the administration about this morning and last week as well. I said that I suppose if I could be a fly on the wall over the next couple of years here, I'm going to see this same room and these same individuals or others like you having discussions about where are we going to put all these kids? And because this community is growing. 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago now, happened to be on election day, November 6th, Mr. Tilia and I presented to the County Board of Supervisors. We were scheduled to show them the plans of the new school at the Santana Ranch. And they were very impressed with the design and asked some questions. And then I had permission from the board chair to present. And it was ironic because we were second on the docket, second only to a discussion that the board was having about yet another development with not 1,100 homes, but 1,200 homes. And so I had a great opportunity to say, gee, it would be really nice. We weren't put in the loop until after the 1,100 homes were entitled, and we were left trying to find a space and having to buy it from the developers graciously as they came forward with, you can have 10 acres for $12 million because they're holding the entitlement in their hand. And they ultimately settled for $5 million. And I wonder where in San Benito County 10 acres sells for $5 million. I don't know of any place, but I'm bird walking. But the bottom line is the first purpose, I said, we were already placed behind the 8 ball on the 1,100 home development, which is coming out of the ground. Are we going to be behind the 8 ball on the 1,200 home development that's coming out? Are we going to be told to negotiate with the developer after they have the permit in hand? So, but bottom line is, there's going to be more homes. My point is going to be more homes. There's going to be more development. This is a beautiful community. People want to live here. Developers want to build homes. And this district is not going to have a declining enrollment, in my opinion, for a lot of years to come. It's going to have an increasing enrollment. So back to my point, I apologize for the rant, but I wanted to say that we have to look at what we can control and what we can't control. The boundary school attendance boundaries are always a point for discussion. They raise very difficult discussions in the community because people like going to the schools that they consider to be within their attendance area. And if you adjust those, but even still, I don't believe there's a lot of room. It's not like we have a school that's half empty. So we spent several hours on this on the last couple of meetings I had with the administration about where are we going to put everybody as they come forward, and even the ones we have now. The other things we can't control are the public streets. I would think that we would want to put on our plan of action for the future an ingress and egress, a traffic ingress and egress to as many schools as we possibly can. I don't know where the money would come from that, but I will tell you that about 15 years ago. No, it was less than that, it was 2008, 10 years ago. Salinas City had the same identical problem. And the bond that they passed, they said, we're going to put aside a certain amount of that for safety. And if you know that town at all, if you know any of the schools, they built an ingress and egress in every single elementary school, 13 elementary schools, that divert the traffic off the main road just for delivery and pickup for students. And someone is out there moving them along. And one thing I was going to say about the airport, you've all been to the airport, you know, you don't turn your car off.
Right.
You don't leave. You don't even walk to the luggage rack. You got the whistle blowing at you saying, move or we're going to tow you.
Right.
It's enforced strongly and quickly. You don't leave that car except to say goodbye, hug your loved ones, and get moving again. And that's all you have time for, but it's enforced very strongly with loud whistles. And so their enforcement is necessary. The possibility of building ingress and egress where the traffic moves through sport. I was interested in seeing that people line up 45 minutes to an hour. My guess, I'm only guessing, my guess is why would somebody want to line up an hour before? Because they would rather give the hour before school dismisses than the hour after school dismisses. Students, children of families always have things to do after school. They have sports, they have the music lessons, they have the 4-H meetings, they have the doctor appointments, on and on and on. And they're always in that little bit of time between school dismissal and the end of the workday. And so parents want to get those kids, go do what they need to do and move on. So we have got to develop a very quick revolving door. Just like you said, the airports, but we can't control the main roads. And when somebody parks on the main road and we ask them to move, we get the, in your opinion, answer. And so it's very hard to do that. We can control them when they're on our facility, and our buildings are limited. But I would only think that those are the places that we can control. Enrollment's going to go up. We need to develop an ingress and egress that is quick. We need to have it supervised so that somebody, and I hear what the teacher's saying, you weren't trained to be traffic cops. I know that. But we have to get someone to have with a loud whistle to keep them moving. And then maybe a couple of staggered stop. But even the staggered dismissals don't work because parents have a second grader, a fourth grader, and a sixth grader. And we all know this. So yes, board, there is not an easy answer to this. There's not an answer at this moment. I think that involved the cooperation of the law enforcement. I do believe that we can continue to request help. I know some of you have already made several communications with them. It would help us if they would at least enforce the no stopping, no turns, no U-turns, no this or that. And just a few times out there, I think might make a difference on people thinking about doing it twice. So I'm not giving you a distinct answer. I'm just saying, let's control the things we can control. Let's admit the things we cannot control, and let's work on those things we can control. And I think that they would be, a future plan for ingress and egress. By the way, my story about Salinas, it was all predicated on a crossing guard being killed. I'm sorry to admit that. But a crossing guard was struck and killed by a vehicle coming to drop off their child. And the sun was shining right into the sky, but it was on a public street. Mission Park School, Acacia Street, main part of Old Town, Salinas. And that's what predicated the bond, and that's what predicated the ingress and egress at all 13 schools. They haven't quite completed that, they're working toward it. And they've got most of them done now. If you go by any of the new, of the old schools that have been in town a long time, you'll see those ingresses and egresses. But they also are supervised. Somebody's out there every day with the whistle, move it along, no waiting. If the child's not ready, go around, keep moving, go around to the back, start over. So, and that would be my suggestion. These are positive problems, ladies and gentlemen. I know they're frustrating as can be to the drivers and to the parents but these are positive problems because you have an awful lot of good things going on at schools, and you have a growing community that cares about its schools, and these are answers that are not going to be easily found. But I think bringing them here and asking your staff to continue to come back with any idea they have to mitigate the problem that we have now will be a step in the right direction. And I'll end it with there, and I just say that I know this community and this school board, for a little bit of time I've been here, has the capacity to keep improving. And so just keep bringing forth the suggestions, I don't care how minimal they are. And I think we need to speak with our employees and ask them for their best suggestions. And if we put our heads together, I think we can find even the smallest things that will help the process along a little bit better. Thank you, Madam.
Have we talked to the city about the parking enforcement people? You mentioned.
No, our SRO is the one that's out in the mornings doing her rounds around the school. And if there is someone who is violating any traffic law, it could be as Hollywood stock, it's anything. And she will pull you over and she will ticket you.
8 sites rather than one big site.
Yes, yeah. But, I mean,
I don't know, I would call them a meter maid, but I guess that's not politically correct. But
I think we have one for the whole city.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, she's got me a couple times. Close to it.
Yeah, the meter maid, it's, yeah.
Madam President, if I could suggest, I went back to this slide, the common school factors, because each one of these schools that are experiencing problems are a shared campus. And prior to Dr. Andrew departure, she presented to the board back in May, I believe, in regards to these 3 specific school sites about long-term plans because of the increased enrollment and those types of things. So if the board wishes, we can come back to the board and revisit that topic, specifically focusing on those 3 sites and looking at some options for those sites that may lend some help to this situation that we're dealing with right now. Not to say that we can't do some of these interim ideas as well. So if the board would like staff to go back and bring back to the board, focusing on those 3 sites, more of a long-term plan for those sites, as well as maybe some suggestions on what we could do in the short term to try to get us through this situation.
The last thing, like, Dr. Barr is saying, the last thing I think any of us would want is to be reactive because a child was killed or a staff member was killed. I don't want us to do that. And so this is a severe thing. Anybody in a vehicle, it's like, to me, bullet in a gun.
But to the extent possible, you want to get them off public roads, to the extent possible. I know we build on public roads, but that's, accident's going to happen anywhere, but if at all possible, you want to get the school traffic off a public road, because public traffic is going to be coming by, not caring that school is dismissing or arriving.
Right.
And we have, and again, getting back to the communication to our community and our parents, we have programs that are available before and after school. We offer free breakfast at every school site so that they don't have to be dropped off right when school starts. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Pennington, but we have free breakfast at all the school sites. We have many ways to get into every school site. They don't necessarily need to be dropped off at the front door. They can be dropped off at a side gate. They can be dropped off at the corner. As long as they're on a safe path of travel to get to the school, we want them to feel comfortable to get to the school. They have a place where they can eat, they can study, they can do what they need to do prior to school happening, as well as after school. Every school site has after school programs that are offered. I will tell you though that when I come back to present options or ideas for these 3 school sites, it's going to be focusing on priority 3s more than anything. We're going to have to be talking about the class sizes, the programs, those types of things. Because physically, we're running out of space at some of these sites. And so I just wanted to make sure that the board was aware of that and not surprised that some of these topics will be at that priority 3 level discussion, unlike just a form of communication.
All right, so finally, John, if you could just take a look at Ed Code 32211, if that helps with the enforcement. I stand by my comment despite the groans in the audience, because at another school board I was on a member of, we actually did use that effectively.
The ability to enforce traffic that has an influence on.
It was something out in the parking lot, and it was, if you're on the grounds of a school, the principal or the designee, it's a misdemeanor, so it's a powerful tool.
We can include that as a recommendation when we come back to the board for some short-term types of measures that we can put into place. But getting back to what Trustee Martinez said about the phone calls, about the complaints, there's going to be a new set of phone calls and a new set of complaints. So I just would like to finish up by saying I really think that our principals and our staff, the teachers, they're working really hard to make an effort out there, really trying to ensure that everybody's safe. And we're going to do what we can to support them on that. But I know your question is do they not know what to do, or are they doing things? They're doing things. It's just to what degree does the board want us to take those things, so that, again, the board isn't surprised when we implement possibly some new changes to our policies and procedures. So staff will come back with those recommendations for you to consider within the next several weeks.
Do we know on average how many of our students are picked up and dropped off? What percentage that looks like at each school? How many are walkers? How many are picked up, dropped off? I mean, it's to really assess and analyze, and why, who's dropping them off? Is it daycare? Is it, parent? So that we're trying to kind of then, if we can identify who those parents are, in which category and whatnot, we can start directly having conversations with those parents about after-school programs, about, offering some assistance so that we can alleviate, but we have to identify who they are.
Right. Well, I'll just give you a quick example. So Gavilan Hills HTLA, Gavilan Hills has 2 kindergarten classes, okay? And then HTLA has 2 transitional kindergarten classes and 4 kindergarten classes. So you figure there's 8 classrooms with, for the most part, the majority of every one of those students is dropped off and picked up because they're at that age level.
I would just suggest that we do continue to look, I think John's correct, Mr. Chillia is right in looking at priorities 3. I would simply add one that looks at some form of enforcement.
Yeah.
Enforcing the school traffic rules on and off the campus, and communicating that to the parents. And I know there's some parents that would dismiss the thought, but I think the vast majority of the parents would try to make it work. I have faith in parents that if we stated some strong traffic rules that the school district has adopted regarding it to enforce the safety of students at every school, and it means doing this with your car, not doing this with your car, so forth. I think the vast majority of the parents would try to make it work. So I'd like to add that to priority 3s and then take a look at them and come back with whatever we can possibly do.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the report on progress towards district goals by Aro Hart.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Elena Ayala Hatchett, principal at R.O. Hardin. I'm here to provide an update on R.O. Hardin. That right there is our morning message, and on November 11th, we had a group of veterans come on over and do a demonstration of the folding of the flag, and that is a picture of all of our, both sites. Actually, Nick, right? We got HPS here, and we have RO Hardin, and they're both coexisting on that little call it sundial. For District Goal 1, we have the data for 2018-17. For all ELA, all students, 50% were for the district, right? That row above. Okay. I'm sorry. So our site, 2017, we were at 33.1% and we dropped a little bit. But I want to show you, and I want to highlight our English language learners. We were at 16.4% of those students that were meeting or exceeding standards, and we went up to 33%, so that's a success. That is definitely a celebration. We did drop in our special education. We had 21% of the students who were meeting or exceeding, and we went down to 4. Math, 30.3% were meeting or exceeding, and we went to 28.1. EL Math, 21.2% to 20%, and students who have IEPs, 15.1% to 0%. Our successes, what we have going on in TKK1 is our inclusionary practices. Coaching to support teachers. We have 1 ELA coach and 1 math coach. We also have a lot of time for teachers to meet and debrief with their coaches. We have about 40 minutes for them to do that. Our next steps, we're going to follow up on student progress, growing the program 1 year at a time, support for new students to integrate successfully, and meeting with coaches regularly to support the school's instructional vision. Today we had, talk about a celebration of being positive, moving forward, is we met with partners. And our ILT met with partners, and we were able to set goals for our action plans, and debrief and talk. You know, it was nice to have thought partners. District Goal 2, implementation of capturing kids' hearts. The goal was 80%, and we are at 80% of our sites working on CKH. Our suspension rate, 0.8% is the goal, and we are at 0.8%. Our successes, we've developed a PBIS committee. She's not here right now. Our assistant principal has developed a PBIS committee.
She is.
Oh, she is, of course she is. Oh, there she is. Lizette Jimenez. PBIS is Positive Behavioral Systems. It's developing school-wide behavior matrices as well as discipline matrix, incentives to get kids to want to follow the school rules, or procedures, I should say. We have ICS for schools, onboarding 3 sites. The ICS for schools is our, I would say it's our emergency security, safety, go-to folks. Onboarding 3 sites, RO Hardin, Head Start, and Hollister Prep. Our assistant principal, Lizette Jimenez, has really been working closely with Nick Bakich, the principal of vice principal at Hollister Prep, and updating evacuation routes. First of the month, another success, first of the month lunchtime activities. When we have coffee with the principal, I'm able to meet with parents, and the parents actually came up with having activities at lunchtime, something positive for kids to do, because we're talking about behavioral issues. And they volunteered their time to host board games, because some kids like board games. We had a dance on the blacktop, so we had a speaker system out there with music. We had HYA, Hollister Youth Alliance, who was such a support that day. They had posters all over the place. And they also held 2 games for kids to go on out there and have some fun. During the time, we have a staggered lunch. So during the time that HPS is out there, we were able to The parents were so gracious. We were able to bring all the kids on and not just turn off the music for when HPS was out there, but we were able to keep it all on and keep the activities going for both sides. Our next steps, PBIS committee will establish school-wide rules. PBIS committee will establish a behavioral matrix. We do have those right now. We do have a draft and we're waiting for approval from the committee. Acknowledgement of PBIS via school-wide assembly and expectation lesson plans. So the acknowledgement of the PBIS we'll introduce that to the students via an assembly. District Goal 3, Hollister School District attendance rate. Our attendance rate for Hollister School District, the goal is 96.5%, our site 96%. Chronic absenteeism, the goal is 13.5%, and our goal, we achieved was 11.6%. Balanced budget, yes. Our successes, our attendance rate increased from last year about 6%. Chronic absenteeism is down 5.6% from last year. Enrollment is up. Using budget allocation to provide release time for professional development. Many of our successes are due to our school site, our SIPSA, our school plan for student achievement. And a lot of the goals were brought to the table by the parents. Our next step is to continue using the budget allocation to support professional development, encourage students in daily attendance during morning message. We do morning message every single day. So we're out there, we have certain teachers go out there and present maybe a song for the kids to learn in sign language. I think that was just as of recent. And we do the flag salute together. So then when the bell rings, we're able to get into the classroom immediately and start instruction. Our next step is also attendance incentives. And that's a picture of the lunchtime activities. That was a dream board station. One of our parents wanted to bring magazines and markers and glue and have kids draw their dreams on there. Any questions?
So could you go back to District Goal 1 and the success and next steps page? So I can't let this go. So the way I look at this is your successes were you improved a lot, over double, in English language learners ELA. English language in language arts. And you beat the Hollister standard for EL math by 5 points, even though you declined 1.2. So when I'm sitting here as an academic institution, those were what your successes were. Where the current successes were, you did go down in ELA. I don't know what's going on with SPED, but I think that takes a deeper dive. And you went down in all math and you're below the district average. And I guess I want to know is, what is the path to doing better at R.O. Hardin? I know R.O. Hardin, well, I don't know R.O. Hardin, I guess, but this is the problem with only getting summary data. Is it a group of kids in particular that are bringing these scores down? Is there a group of kids that are doing really well at R.O. Hardin? Maybe what's going on? I mean, how do we, as school board members, say, oh yeah, this is okay, this is great?
And I'm so glad we're a part of partners because they're guiding us into those deeper dive data chats. They're teaching us and showing us how to look at the data and how to disaggregate the data.
But but do we know at least at some level right now what's going on?
We're digging deep, we're working on it.
I think one thing that happens with special ed students is the numbers are very few. And so the numbers at all schools tend to fluctuate up and down a lot because it's a very small number. So that would be one thing for the special ed numbers.
Okay, how about the general population?
The general population, they also did not have a math coach last year. They only had an English language arts coach. One of the ideas of giving R.O. Hardin a math coach was that they were struggling a little bit in math. So that's very new. The school's only had a math coach since August.
So, but we do have one now.
We do, yes.
Okay.
And so that was definitely targeted for that purpose at that school. And I think that Elena's right, that the partners, the whole work with Partners in School Innovation is about looking at data and figuring out exactly what you're asking, which is what's happening. Where are some groups making progress? Where are they not making progress? Where do we need to set goals? And they actually did set a number of really good goals. I sat in with them this afternoon. And based on the disaggregating and getting into a little bit more of the nitty gritty data of the current assessments, not just the big assessments that you're seeing.
Okay, I mean,
It's a good question.
well, thank you, but
Yeah.
am I supposed to feel good about what I'm looking at? Because right now, if I'm a parent, I'm not feeling, I'm good.
Right.
Again, unless, like you said, with special ed.
Yeah.
It's a small number that are
Yes.
influencing, okay, got it.
Yeah.
You know,
And we're always looking at improvement. So when we look at the English language arts improvement, like Elena said, to double that, what we want to know is what did they do? What did you do to get that? That's amazing. So my question would be, what did you do with your English learners that your progress was doubled? And that's what we want to do again for everybody. So.
And, yeah, right. Set goals.
I mean, just like we saw this morning where we saw, hey, as long as you improved, we're going to make sure the world recognizes you improved. It's sort of like
Yeah.
you're gonna come back with a deeper dive on this. I mean, that's my,
Sorry.
Yeah, if it's a very small population, like in SPED, it's a very, very small population.
Yeah, special ed.
We can tend to start justifying it because it's such a small population that just a very small variance will take the numbers a large pace in one direction or the other. But there's something obviously very serious about special ed in the math and English language arts area. If it's a small number, I agree.
It's a very small.
We can't go to 4 and 0. We
Right.
can't. So, that's obviously something that's I need there. That needs to be analyzed, of course, like everything you're saying, take down, do the analysis and figure it out.
Yep.
And something I would like to see too, not tonight, but somewhere in the future, I would suggest maybe a little longer longitude. I don't know if we had a score, a 2016 score, it'd be nice to, 3 points draws a straight line.
Yeah.
Two points, you
Right.
can't draw a straight line.
Right.
So 3 points would be a lot better if we could see the 16 and then the 17 and then the 18. It would help us a lot in knowing if that's just a fluctuating number, if it's going up or it's going down, sideways, whatever. But it's certainly worthy of further exploration.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we're gonna have Mr. Rita. I'm gonna talk about study slope.
Outstanding. Good evening. How are you? I am doing amazing. Every single day of my life that I'm here, I'm amazing. All right, the Sunny Slope School Update. Joe Rivas, Principal, Hollister School District Board of Trustees. Thank you for being here for my presentation tonight. That's right, drum roll please. I am hoping, Junior's not feeling well today, but I'm hoping that this works tonight. The last time I was here, you had to magically do it because I did not know how to turn the button on. So, here we go. This is one of our Blacktop DJ on the Blacktop dance parties that we have. It's one of our attendance incentives because what you're going to see later is a high chronic absenteeism rate at Sunny Slope School. And it's been that way for a decade. And I'm still trying to figure out why and how. So this is one of our incentives that we do to get kids to come to school. When they do, Friday afternoon, we break them up in groups and we come out and we dance. We got the lower grades there and we got some of the teachers out there dancing and having a good time connected. All right, district goal number 1, all students will achieve at their highest level. And of everything I have done in the last 2 years, this screen is what I'm the most proud of as you look at that. Now, as we continue to grow our scores, and Dr. Barr, I was just thinking about what you were saying about the third line, the 2016 of the straight line going up as you see. As we read this screen from the bottom going to the top up, is although the scores are not as high as I would like them to be. You can see from the 17-18 a growth of 3%, which outpaced the district by 1% from a 48 to a 50. Our English language arts ELA went from a 13% to a 17%, growing at a rate of 4%, whereas the district dropped by 2%. Special ed ELA went from a 6% to a 15. When you see the district went from a 13 to 11. So not only outpacing the growth, but actually outpacing that number as well. In all math, growing from a 31 to a 35. And that number from the 2016 would be a straight line going up as well. And English language arts math from a 10% to a 17%, not only outpacing, but matching and being above the district level of 15%. And again, also in special education math from a 6% to a 15%, and then the district going from a 12% to an 11%. So this single screen is what I am the most proud of. And you'll see in my next slide where it says successes, it starts off with, please see every category from the previous slide. I'll just flash back for you real quick so you can take a peek. Also our successes is every classroom is practicing Capturing Kids' Heart strategies in the rooms. And when Capturing Kids' Heart came out, the lady that was out there talking about working towards becoming a national showcase school because of how close we are and what she saw in the classrooms, and our second grade inclusion practices with SDC and general education students, with the idea of growing next year from second to third. Next steps, continuing refining the CFA process of preparation for a true PLC model in the 1920 school year, professional learning community model where teachers are able to identify the students by name, by need, and then grouping within their grade level classrooms, essentially making an effective tier 1 instruction.
What is the CFA process?
Common formative assessment where then continuing Capturing Kids' Heart practices to become a national showcase school, and then again expand the inclusionary practices to third grade students in the 1920 school year. District goal number 2, Capturing Kids' Heart. The reason why I put 80 to 100% is because that's a tough one, because I have 80% of the teachers practicing 100% of the strategies in Capturing Kids' Hearts, but 100% of the teachers are implementing 80% of the strategies. And we've had those discussions at staff meetings with teachers. Implementing the 4 questions is tough for some. Remembering to do the daily launch at the end of the day. Those are some of the obstacles that they're running into, and we're working on as a staff. The Capturing Kids' Heart safety at school, the data from the students from last year, 5th grade, 74% feel safe at the school site. 70% of the parents that took the survey is a very low number, only 10. I don't know quite what happened, and you'll see that's one of my next steps. 70% of the students that filled out the survey feel welcome. And as of October 31st, when I filled this out, suspension rate was at 1.4%. Successes, 94% of recorded 5th grade responses state that it is clear at the school site that bullying is not allowed. 100% of the students at school participate in some form of relationship building every school day. And what I mean by that is I built into the daily schedule a 15-minute block where teachers, the expectation, as you could say, is that they do some sort of relationship building activity every single day, whether that's good things through Capturing Kids' Hearts, whether that's giving the students an opportunity to eat the free daily breakfast in class and talk and break bread together and have a community, in the idea of building relationships, not just with their teachers, but with each other. Also a success, a school-wide social contract has been created that all students have agreed upon, and at some point in the very near future, we have a Sunny Slope social contract wall, and the words are going to be painted up there. And then once that's done, the students will come by and put their fingerprint on the board. I put in the work order, but it has not been completed yet, but I know it will be done soon. Next steps, lobby for a full-time assistant principal to assist the needs of the students with special needs on campus. I'm going to keep content, just wanted to throw that one in there. Increased amount of 5th grade student responses on Capturing Kids' Hearts survey for 18-19 school year, and then become a Capturing Kids' Hearts National Showcase School. District goal number 3, the district will maintain a budget and reserve that ensures sustaining programs and services for students and staff. The attendance rate at Sunny Slope, the district average here at this time was 96.3%. On that day, October 31st, we are at 95.4%. Chronic absence is 9.4% of the district on that day. And this is one that fluctuates every single day because it's 10% of the school year that a student has missed. And so 12% of my students as of October 31st had missed 10% of school days. It's higher right now. I'm at like 15.2% as of today. I don't know why. I don't. I mean, I I responded to somebody earlier today talking about the teachers talk to the parents that had the high rate of, absences during the parent-teacher conferences. We have the We Beat the Bell sign that every time the students are there, they get to color in a day or color in a letter of We Beat the Bell. And then there's a matrix that we created of what they can do. Unfortunately, one of the most popular ones these days has been PE with the principal, which was a great idea at the time, but now I'm going out there and it's like, oh geez, I gotta take my tie off and roll up my sleeves. It's fun though. It brings me back to the old days, but there's a matrix of things that the classes can pick. So, and balanced budget, currently, yes, the budget is balanced for now. I'll run out of money at some point. All right.
So that 12%, that's kids that are late too, correct? Or is that they're gone the entire day?
It is 10% of missed school days.
Okay.
So if today is day, 82, I don't even know, just making up a number.
They missed 8 total days.
9.
18.
9.
10% of the school days of the year?
So if this were day 82, that means they've missed 9 days of school.
Oh, up till present.
Yes.
Not, okay.
Because I'm assuming that because, like I said, I check Schoolzilla not every single day, but 3 to 4 times a week, and the number is going. At one point, I was like 8%. I was like, "Hey, this is great," and then the next day it was like 11.2.
Okay.
What happened? Well, I had 12 kids absent today, the same 12. So that 9th day, if they missed 9, and then at 8, they'd be under 10% of missed school days. So, but it's something I work on. It's probably one of my most frustrating issues right now is if kids aren't at school, they can't learn. All right, goal number 3 with this part, the district will maintain a budget and reserve. Successes, serving breakfast before school. I really felt for John Tila tonight, talking about the improved traffic flow because at Sunny Slope, the new design is amazing. Of course, we also had the advantage of expanding our parking lot, expanding everything in there. The first 4 to 6 weeks of the school year, lots of people were upset with me, writing letters, telling me how we should redesign the parking lot, but it really is doing really well as people are getting used to it. We have a great advantage there. Utilizing current staff for morning and lunchtime activities, and what that means is using our PE teacher, the instructional aide, to do mileage club, to have lunchtime games, to do those types in an attempt to lower discipline issues, because if you give kids something to do, right, idle hands, all right, take those idle hands away. Parent club fundraising, we have a very active parent club that helps to raise money and supplement lots of things such as assemblies and field trips, and maximize district training to continue the inclusion model with our SDC students. Next steps, continue to support the parent club, seek input from staff and community on how to utilize resources to have a positive impact on student activities. And what that means is I have a parent that is working with me who is going out and trying to find community members to come in and bring things to the school at a price I like. Free. So free. So, and she's working with that. And that's geared towards the end of the year with going out and getting people to come in. She has lots of ideas. It's not there yet, which is why it's in the next steps category. So, but that's something that I've been working and talking with her about, and then meeting with the staff on what it is that we want to do, and build community relationships to bring free or reduced fee activities to the school site. And that is a continuation of the second one. And
art activities?
Yes, art activities with the San Benito Arts Council, with the funds that they come in, and I'm meeting with Amanda. I always have a hard time saying her last name, Giotto, on Friday to utilize those funds that they have. And then, of course, the last one and the sad one this year, about 40 days ago, give or take, Cindy Lubke died, who was a longtime member of our school community and our district. And so I put this picture on here just to honor her memory and just to really talk about how that really brought our school community together in an unfortunate way, which death sometimes tends to do in our society. With what just everybody reaching out, and Dr. Barr, a personal thank you for myself for covering all the expenses in terms of on the Hollister side, but the Hollister side that we could. We gave the family, we let them have the memorial services at the Tiger's Den, our multi-purpose room, and the custodians for that day. So it was amazing, and it's been really rough on all of us. And we finally had the memorial service on November 10th, which gave most of us at the school site, students and parents and families and community, some closure on what was a very difficult time for our school site. But this was an amazing time to see just what being a Tiger was all about. So, thank you. Any questions? I believe that concludes my presentation. Let me check. I guess I'm done. Any questions on any of that? I can hit the rewind button.
Did you have any instructional coaches at Sunday School?
Last year I did have 2, and this year.
Or English language?
And this year we have 1. Yes, we had less teachers, and so we did have 2 last year.
Okay.
Both focused on language arts and the implementation of the new benchmark advanced curriculum. Going once?
Very good.
Going twice?
Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
thank you very much.
Now we're going to hear about the Accelerated Achievement Academy.
Oh, let's delay it one more.
Yeah.
Good evening,
Scott.
board, students, board. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to talk about something I really love, which is our school AAA. Our first slide gives you an example of the joy that I get to have every day. This was in the morning, coming out to see the kids in the morning before the bell rang. And Jose, the student, third from the left, poked a hole in his water bottle, squeezed the water bottle for pressure, and decided to make Dogman one of his favorite characters. And all of our kids just kind of came around and kind of celebrated his artistic impromptu creation. And it also shows that these are also our 4th graders who have been together for, at this point, about 3 weeks. They're already connecting and finding bonds. One of the neat parts of our school is we start in the 4th grade. And so, other schools have the ability to build this camaraderie over kindergarten through 4th. We have that within a couple weeks at our school, which is a really tribute to our culture and the kids and what we build. Our test scores are pretty impressive. Our scores are great in the sense, from my perspective, that we really targeted math. We were in the mid-80s or low 80s for much of our existence, and not having that focus on math in the past and really looking at that last year, getting a good 3% bump, it was really a tribute to a lot of hard work our staff did in terms of looking at data and then building plans, building formative assessments, looking at where we had some structural challenges with math, and looking at how to translate the math and the great textbooks we have into the test we're going to be taking. How are our students translating the standard in the different ways they're going to see it? And our staff did a great job working on that, and that 3% jump is that hard work. In English language arts, with the new series we use this year, we still maintained a mid to high 90s range. It was not our #1 priority. In fact, it was our 3rd priority last year. At that being said, our 7th and 8th grade students had 100% proficiency or advanced status, which means as our students grow from 4th, 5th, and 6th, we're closing those gaps the longer our students are with us. So it shows we take kids at a pretty strong level, but we're also making them better because we're working with them and we're knowing them by name and by need. So our numbers and our data, I think, are strong. That leads to some of our successes. With our numbers the way they stand, we grew significantly in elementary school rankings across the state. We're currently the 11th highest ranked elementary school in the state, according to School Digger. And we were also the 5th highest middle school in the state. And that's something that we can be really proud of. It's something that has grown over time, and a lot of people are part of that growth and success. And it's something that we continue to get to, because I think we could be #1 in the state. We're only a few percentage points off of actually knocking off Whitney High School, which is recognized across the state as the highest achieving middle school. I used to have some friends there. I've been calling them a little bit and letting them know that we're coming. Another thing too is we're doing project-based learning, which is, I think, the idea of what are we doing to stretch beyond test scores. We have scores, but we also want kids to be original thinkers, and the 21st century standards are clear about students needing to be able to think and build and solve problems. And so twice a year, we started last year with 1 project. This year we're going to do 2. Students are going to be in charge of solving real problems. And what we do in those circumstances, instead of just providing information, as educators we coach. And in teams, students tackle these perspectives. And we get a chance to look at what they're doing and make a few suggestions and ask some questions. But the students get to create that answer. And then the great part is we have to publicly present it. So in that way, knowledge isn't left alone or just left in a paper or a Chromebook. It's something students then lobby and connect with. And so December 5th, if you're interested or available, we'll be having our first PBL day at 8:20. We're going to have some of our classrooms share with other students, and parents are going to come, and you're welcome to see some of that great knowledge, because we've had a lot of good support with training our teachers in that. We also have student-led conferences, which has been a success across the board. It's hard for students not to take ownership they're learning and what they're doing when they're sitting with mom and teachers and themselves, and they're having to honestly assess why they are performing or why they're not performing. We're currently stretching that into the middle school, which is an exciting opportunity for our older kids to be a little more honoring and owning their own learning. We have an instructional leadership team that's building formative assessments. It's taken over a year and a half, but at that same time, we're really good now at finding what that means for us. And that's a long discussion, but we're really getting to the point where we are every couple of standards testing to see if students are really mastering the thing we're teaching. And then the last thing is we also have a 5-year student passport, and this is where our parent club has really supported us. We believe that there's a lot of great things in our community and in our surrounding areas to see. Our students, by the time they leave us at AAA, will have seen 5 colleges, and we'll have been on 10 really standard-based field trips. We go as far as Los Angeles, the Museum of Tolerance. We go into San Francisco. We go into all kinds of cultural events, and our parent club supports that, and that's really exciting for us. So our challenges ahead is making sure that that's sustainable. Good news is we just supported our 2nd year of the same field trips for all of our students that are almost all paid for in November of this year, which means the money we make between now and then as a parent club, they're putting as their 501c away for the next year. So we have sustainability with these trips, which is exciting. Our numbers for implementation for Capturing Kids' Hearts is 100%. We have, our classrooms have social contracts, asked for 4 and actually sometimes 5 questions, and are really strong in terms of connecting and greeting kids every day. And it's been really great for building relationships. 96% of our students know that bullying is not okay on our campus. And almost 90% of our families feel welcome on campus. And that's despite a tightening of driving rules and regulations for those field trips and asking for some other difficult forms and other things about driving records to protect student safety. And we still have those high numbers. So I think we get those a little higher next year when that policy becomes a little more real. Our suspension rate is less than 1%. We've had 1 suspension in 2 years. Capturing Kids' Hearts has really allowed us to deal with our challenges in an open and relationship building way. So in terms of our successes going forward, we really want to be, like other schools in the district, a national showcase school. We really want to build those strong relationships with staff. We have good discussions and build things out together in groups using social contract. We discussed in our staff meeting today how talking and connecting with people is leading us to the kind of results we want. And we're not losing anything in the meantime. We just have a better connection with students the next time we need to reinforce or redirect, something we need to look at. We also, with our parent club, is a really strong partnership that's really bringing parents and families into our school. And the nice thing is that they support every student. They're not just supporting their student. In my experience, that's been pretty rare, where you have a parent club that supports every kid, not just the ones in their grade level. In terms of our next steps, we really want to grow AAA's program. In the past, the board has directed the superintendent and through that myself to grow our program at AAA because there's a lot of great things that we can offer and give. And so this year's the first time we've had 2 classes per grade level in the 4th grade. We've got double the amount of students. We have 2 teachers collaborating, working together, and it's increased the diversity of our school. The diversity is going to be really important later when they get to in 8th grade, and they've been together so long that they're more like family. And maybe we want to have them a little bit where they can still be colleagues and more kids to interact with. So that's an exciting part of our next steps and goals. In terms of our attendance, we have a very high attendance rate above the district average. Our absenteeism is probably the lowest, and we have a balanced budget. In terms of moving forward, though, we really need to make sure that our parent club stays 501c, and that's something they've worked really hard to do. That's also been sustained over the last couple of years. We want to make sure that our project learning is offered to our new teachers, and so that's something we're training is going to have to be a part of what we do in the future as we implement that 2nd day or that 2nd project. We're really excited about having 2 really great ideas. And then really we're going to have a challenge in the future in that there's so much good growth and there's such a great partnership at Calaveras with ourselves and AAA that we're going to be running out of space in a little while. So we're probably going to have to look at that, and that's something long-term for the growth and the viability of our program we probably need to consider. And this last picture, I think, shows again that human connection. These are 2 students that hadn't seen each other for 4 years. One student was recently accepted, and I actually saw this. They actually saw each other and said hello, and then came across, and a photographer came for a newspaper article. I don't know if you saw it, but it was just a really kind of a sweet first day, and it kind of reminds me of the fact that we're doing good things. So that's my update.
Good story.
It's a good story. It's fun every day.
Any questions? Good job. Next item on our agenda is consent items. These are items that are considered routine and may be enacted by the board in one motion. There's 11A through 11G, I think.
I'd like to
Can
make
I
a
have a
motion.
motion to
So moved.
all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. Discussion action items. Money game. Approval of the 2018-19 first interim budget.
All right. Good evening, members of the boards. Superintendent Dr. Barr. I'm just going to go over our 2018-19 first interim budget. So there are quite a few changes from original budget to now. I'll touch on some of the major ones in the slide and then kind of go through some of the other ones as we're going through some of the more detailed revenue and expenditure slides. So one of the biggest changes that I really want to highlight for the first interim as compared to the original budget is looking at our ADA. So we saw a very large jump in our enrollment this year. It's not, it's a very healthy amount of growth, nothing unmanageable. We're looking at, compared to this time last year, about 180 students. So what we're looking at now, if you remember, I did a presentation a month or two ago about enrollment, how that was going. We did an analysis of, okay, when we see this amount of change in our enrollment, how does that really translate into ADA? So we kind of took these past trends and sort of projected forward in ADA to say, okay, what are we really looking at? So using that number, we're projecting an ADA this year of about 5,256, so about a 107 jump from last year. And kind of using those same methods, we look into 1920 and 2021, where we're still projecting that sort of growth. Where we're not really projecting our unduplicated count to change that much. It's a 3-year rolling average. So if we do start seeing a change in, year to year unduplicated, we're really not going to see that number for LCFF purposes change for a little bit of time. COLAs remain the same, gap funding, PERS and STIRS rates have all remained the same from from original budget. PERS we're looking at this year 18.062%, and in 2 years will be 23.4. That's projected to go up to a little over 27. CalSTRS, that is set by statute to be at 19.1% in 2021. They can increase it from there, but only by a small amount moving forward. So I said the two real major changes that I want to emphasize here, large increase in enrollment. There was a reduction in the one-time funding. So when we ended up actually doing the budget in June for the final version, there was some talks about reducing the amount of one-time funding, and which had happened in prior years. In prior years, the amount that they were predicting was going all over the place. So the actual 184 per ADA that it ends up now, not a huge change from what we actually projected for our original budget. So you're not gonna see a big change in the budget, but from what the state said that we were gonna get at the time, it's about what we had actually budgeted.
But isn't that a loss of $840,960? I mean, from 344 to 184 times our ADA?
Correct. So there were already some some talks to that, and like I said, in prior years, that had happened as well, where the state had said, hey, we're expecting to give you this large amount of one time, and then by the time we got done and actually got the money, it was about half that. So we were anticipating this. So if you look at the first version of the budget that was presented in May, it had the entire 344.
Right.
Then we started hearing these things, we're like, okay, this is gonna be like prior years. So for the one that was finally approved in June, it was closer to the 184 number. So there really wasn't much change there.
But that's what you projected.
Right, so
in our budget.
that's what we projected.
Oh, you
So
projected the lower number.
Yeah.
We projected the lower number, so that's what I was trying to explain. So we projected the lower number to begin with, because we really did anticipate this from happening.
Got it. Thanks.
Yes,
Job, Kate.
rare, but every once in a while it does work. Okay, so what we're looking at here is our general fund revenues. We're looking at 50.059 million, so that is a hair under $1 million increase compared to what we were projecting at original budget. That is largely due to that large increase in students. The other state revenues, which is our mandated cost reimbursements and that one-time money, very, very little change there, and really we're not projecting any change in local revenues. Restricted's all pretty much the same. The only differences you're gonna see there is mostly in federal when you're dealing with carryover. We did have some carryover in our title programs that's gonna be moving over into this year from last, so we'll be seeing a little bit more revenue there. There's one large change when we're looking at in the other local, and I'll kind of get to that when I get a little more in depth into revenues here in a minute. That's around special education, which is why the contributions at the bottom are actually up $1 million compared to what they were in original budget. That's largely a result of special education expenses and a very large decrease in special education revenue. So this is just kind of looking at our LCFF. So our total target, we are funded at 100% this year, at $50,059,000. Our base grant, so that's very unrestricted. That's what we need to, for our base programs, teachers, paying utilities, things of the sort. It's at about 41.5. Supplemental and concentration, we're projecting to get about $8 million this year. Add-ons, back before LCFF, you had all these categorical programs that were put into that add-ons category, transportation. It's about 422, and that all brings you to that $50 million number. Okay, so what we're looking at here, and you'll have to excuse the decimal there in the charter in lieu, that should be a comma. Property taxes, we get in about 13.9. We do have to give $1 million of that to the charter school. Now that $1 million does get paid out in the LCFF calculation, and we, in a sense, get that back in state aid from the state. So it's not really a loss in this respect of revenue to us. We obviously lose the AD from the students, but on a per student basis, it really isn't a loss to us. So we get $30 million in state aid. EPA is that Proposition 51 that was passed, that extra tax. So the other state we have are, like I said, our lottery mandate block grants are one-time mandate. So that's the one-time money we're going to be getting this year. That's $967,000, $184 per ADA. $25,000 in others, an MTSS grant. We get money from the city of Hollister for using our facilities, so about $300,000, and then the other $410 comes from a plethora of places. We have a lot of either small grants, donations, all kinds of just little things that come in throughout the year. Okay, so for the restricted side, what we get for special education property tax revenue, about $450,000. All of our federal revenues, those are all our titles, Medi-Cal LEA billing is a program where we actually bill for services that our providers provide to students. So we were able to actually bill Medi-Cal for certain services that they provide and recoup some of that. We do have a restricted part of the lottery that can only be spent on approved curriculum. We have our ACES, so that's our after-school programs, YMCA, and Hollister Youth Alliance. Special education here, so this is kind of where this sort of change comes in. So special education, our special education revenue is quite a bit lower. It's not the usual revenue we get from the County Office of Education, from local taxes, and from what's called AB 602, which is sort of our state apportionment. So we run the regional program for the county. So say Roma San Juan has students that they need to have served, they don't have the ability to do so, they send the students here and they pay us for portion of the staff time and everything else. Well, we don't have as many of those students this year. We have quite a bit fewer, so that's actually going to cost us about $400,000 in revenue. And unfortunately, there's no corresponding reduction in expense because whether or not we have those, we still need the teachers there for our students, we still need the aides there for our students. So there really wasn't any possible reduction, even though we had a few fewer kids. We still needed all the staff we had. So it was really just a loss of revenue to us. So this just kind of breaks down a little bit what our general fund revenues are looking like. State aid makes up the vast majority. Property taxes are actually only 22% of our whole general fund revenues. Federal, also very small, and the other two are very small as well. EPA, again, is that education protection account from the additional income and sales tax. Okay, so on to the expenditure side. So not much change here. The about $180,000 change in certificated downward, so it's about $180,000 less. Reason being, we have quite a few vacancies that either haven't been filled or are not, or weren't filled until later. So we had, off the top of my head, 12 that didn't come in until October. So that obviously made a huge difference. So for this year, that is projected to be a little bit lower. Classified salaries, there's $4,000 difference, pretty much right on. Employee benefits were actually revised down $200,000, reason being the drop in certificated for one. The second, when we got new employees coming in, not all of them took benefits that we expected, so that was actually quite a big reduction when you consider it's $15,639 per employee for benefits, so a few of those don't take, and that makes a huge difference. Otherwise, so we're looking at books and supplies, about 2.8. Services, there's a large increase in our services expenditures due to special education. So we have some, with these students that we're getting in, we've also been getting in some students that need services that we can't provide. So sometimes we have to send them out of our district to do that. Also just a lot of other needs that have to be met. So we've had to hire a lot of contractors to take care of those things because either we can't find the personnel or it's not really feasible or a position that we can really offer. Capital outlay, so there's a change there. We did end up, with some of the one time, we ended up replacing some much needed things around the district. Part of that was maintenance and operations vehicles. We found that a lot of them were in excess of 15 years old. At that point, they're sort of costing more to operate and to maintain. So we did replace those. and some other equipment and things around the district that needed to be replaced. Other outgo on the unrestricted side, that is all Santa Ana and Pinnacles. That's what we project. That's usually about what it's been every year. We don't have that many there this year, so that is subject to change. We're still working on that. We'll know a little bit more about that come second interim. On the restricted side, that is that is money that we give to the County Office of Education for servicing our students in some of their special programs, like deaf and hard of hearing, what we call low incidence. Programs like that. It usually runs well over $1 million a year. Last year, for some reason, it didn't. So this one is another one of those that we just have to watch. December 1st, County Office of Education actually compiles sort of their first estimate of what both the number on the unrestricted and restricted side would be. So we will know a bit more about that second interim, but right now we're kind of looking historically and looking at what we think is reasonable with the knowledge that we have in front of us right now. And then the last, of course, indirect costs. That's percentage of monies that we get for operating, federal programs, the titles, and even child nutrition. $30,000 transfer out is to Fund 40. That is for the agreement that we have with the City of Hollister with the facilities use agreement. So we contribute 30 to that fund, they contribute 30 to that fund, and then we say, hey, we need new turf at Rancho. So then that's where we take care of that fund. So here's just a little bit of detail on salaries and benefits for our general fund. We're looking at total teachers and pupil support. So that's teachers, counselors, psychologists, coaches, your speech language pathologists, all of that. So it's looking at 22.5. We get about 277 for substitutes. We did have quite a bit of substitutes this year. So it's bringing that number up slightly. Administrators are at about 2.9, and total benefits on the certificated side are running at about 9.8. On the classified side, so we have all of our aides and support staff, paras, instructional aides, health aides, office staff, district office clerical, all of that into that category, maintenance and operations. 7.5. We're looking at about $317,000 in substitutes. Again, some long-term substitutes, things that we've had to have this year. Administrative on the classified side is about $916,000, and the total benefits for all classified is at about 4.6. And then here we are kind of looking at our unrestricted general fund as a whole. So looking at about 85% is salaries and benefits on the unrestricted side. That's, high historically, but as it is now, pretty much average in terms of looking at us compared to other districts. Books and supplies are small, about 6%. Services, like I said, that did have to go up a little bit, especially some of our special ed things at about 8%. And then capital outlay and the rest very, very small percentage wise. So here we are looking at our general fund ending balance for this year. We began this year unrestricted at 7.1 million. We're looking to end it at 8. So we're going to have on the unrestricted side a $955,000 surplus. The unrestricted side is going to drop. The reason being, we had a lot of some Prop 39 money and some other things, LEA, that we are planning on spending down this year. It was completely planned. These were funds that actually have to be spent down. We didn't get to spending all of it last year, so a lot of things are going to happen, and a lot of more did happen. over 18-19. So we have no problem meeting our reserve for economic uncertainties, which is a minimum of 3%, about just under 1.8 million, which leaves us with about 6.2 otherwise, and a total reserve percentage of about 13.4%. So it's just a little history on what the general fund's reserve has been. Looking back from 2001 till the beginning of the Great Recession right there in 08, 09, 09, 10, we're hovering right around that 5% reserve. So when we got to 09, 10 and we saw, our revenues drop significantly, really didn't have any choice but to, make some very, very difficult decisions, which the district did at the time, and got the district back up. So kind of taking a look, moving forward, I got back from the CASBO CBO symposium. Most general consensus out there is, not going to see a recession in 18, which is pretty much over. They expect growth through 2019. After that point, it really could go either way. Now, the economy's cyclical. It has its ups and downs. So we just want to make sure that we are, adequately prepared so there isn't that, sort of steep cut in services to students.
Can I interrupt for a second? So is that coming from the governor's office that they're not predicting a recession in
Right,
the
so
spring
that
of
was
next year?
the LAO, Legislative Analyst's Office, and I'm trying to remember the other economist was, I do not recall where the other one was from.
I mean, again, I'm from the private sector, but everything that I've read, including from the governor, is that next spring is going to be dicey because all the Facebooks, the Apples, Netflix, Google stock, they're so far down, and property transactions are occurring, so there'll be a downfall in tax collections, blah, blah, blah. So that's going to lead to the next question. When are we able to attend the governor's budget workshops?
Yes, so the next one will be in January, and once we get the information from that, then we'll send out an email to all board members.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because, again, I mean, that since I work in that industry, I sort of.
Right. I'm sort of relaying information that that a lot of the assumptions that we have to use are based on.
Okay.
So, and I think sort of my point with all of this is just, we need to make sure that, no matter what happens, we can sustain programs for students. That's, the most important thing is it's going to go down eventually. That's what happens. It's the cyclical nature of our economy. We just need to make sure that students aren't impacted by that.
Right.
Okay, so general fund contributions, so not very many huge changes here. The big one was special education. That was $700,000 increase to that special education contribution. Fund 40, $30,000 is the same. There is a $45,000 contribution to our extension programs. We're just getting that started this year. Like I said, we'll keep reassessing that, see how that goes. But we're gonna have to contribute a little bit to that program this year. And then, of course, our routine repair and maintenance, so that's all of our maintenance and operations stuff, 1.6 for a total of $10.4 million. And I'll get a little bit into that Resource 8150 routine repair and maintenance here in a second, because it's gonna shift next year. So taking a look at the multi-year projection, we're looking at, our LCFF revenue, if we're continuing on the growth that we have projected that we think we're gonna get, we're looking at $50 million, $50.5 million this year, 53.3 the next, and 55.9 the following. So the total revenues increase significantly over the next 3 years. expenditures will increase as well. Now, two things I want everyone to kind of keep in mind. We're looking at this this is assuming all things remaining status quo, with the exception of the other assumptions in the first slide. You know, this does take into account stirs and pers, step and column, the natural things that increase with time. But that's with, and this also is accounting for additional teachers in each year, but it's not really accounting for anything above that. So if everything remains the same and as projected, we're looking at, this year, 13.4% reserve, the following year about 15.4, with about, $1.2 million, a little over, a little under, surplus that year, and a larger one in 2021, so at about 15.4% in 1920 and about 18.54 in 2021. So that's all things remaining constant. So this is just so I did want to go back real quick. So the one large change that actually is taken into account here. So our restricted routine maintenance account. It's a restricted account that we have that pays for all of our maintenance and operations. When the Great Recession happened, the state said, okay, well, usually you have a 3% requirement. So every year you have to take 3% of your general fund, or the equivalent of 3% of your general fund expenditures, and you have to deposit it into that account. Well, they actually didn't do away with it, but they lessened that amount for several years. That ends this year. So this year it's 2% or the amount that you contributed in 12-13. So that's sort of what we've been running on. We've been kind of in between that 12-13 level and that 3%. Well, next year we don't have a choice. We have to contribute that whole 3%. So it's taking an additional couple $100,000 from our unrestricted general fund and depositing into our restricted side that can only be used for maintenance and operations. So that's one thing that we need to keep in mind, and this does account for that.
Do we account for when is the new school gonna come online and the expenditures and everything that we're gonna need to put into the new school? Because the school, the building itself, everything that goes inside.
Right, so we have some, JT gave you some very preliminary estimates of that. From what we're seeing, we're probably looking at close to $1 million. So we're
looking at 2021?
Probably, that's probably gonna be about right, and that is not in here yet.
Okay.
We're trying to get a little bit better numbers on that, and also get a little bit better handle on exactly what pots of money we're gonna have at that point. So there's a lot of, we're still waiting on state bond funds to come in. We're waiting for them to sell the bonds before it can even come in. So we're waiting on sort of these other variables to kind of work out. So that's something, once we have a little bit better handle on that, that we'll have to have that in reserve. Probably sometime in the next couple of budget cycles, so either second interim or at the end of the year.
Okay.
All right, so does anyone have any questions?
I do have a speaker card. Angela Higgins.
I did my homework. I was actually able to stay awake. I don't know how you do this all the time, Gabe. But I'm here to talk about that 13.44%. I'm smiling about it, but I'm not. Because let's see what we gave up in order to build it. Large class sizes, especially on our littles. Caseloads in special education have increased. The ratio in special education has increased because of decreased paraprofessionals. We lost assistant principals. We lost resource teachers. We lost, I'm trying to connect them. We don't have enough ELD materials because we needed to cut costs.
Some schools have to share Chromebook carts still. Some schools do not have updated technology in their classrooms. With the inclusionary practices that have been required, special ed teachers especially wanted more training on that, and they didn't get what they asked for. Primary grade teachers used to have widely used release time for their one-on-one testing. Now they do that one-on-one testing while keeping one eye on the rest of the class. And also, we're experiencing a huge sub shortage. And when we talk to our substitutes, they say that our pay is much lower than the surrounding areas. How that affects our students is when a class doesn't have a sub, they'll often get split and then sent to 2 other teachers to be babysat, because those teachers can't teach the same curriculum. It's not always even the same grade level. Or a school loses their support person, their intervention teacher, their PE teacher. The one that really bothers me that I've recently heard, and HESTA is going to be addressing this, is the resource specialist. The RSP teachers are getting pulled from their caseloads to substitute because there aren't enough subs. This is what was built. This is what has built your 13.4% reserve. So you might feel proud of it, but our children today need to learn how to read. And the children of the future, we will take care of when chaos comes, because teachers always do.
Any other comments, questions?
Dave, I should have asked you this earlier. When you list the certificate classified and then benefits, is PERS and STIRS rolled into the benefits, the 3,000s?
Correct, yes, that's all benefits.
I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, approval of memorandum of understanding between the Hollister School District and classified school employee association, CSCA.
Good evening, Madam
Yes.
President.
Oh, sorry, yes, hold on. Oh, yes, we do need a motion to approve the first interim report.
Thank you. Okay, you need a motion.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I got these 2 reports.
I know.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, so good evening, Madam President, members of the board, and Dr. Barr. I'm here tonight to present a memorandum of understanding between the Hollister School District and our local chapter of CSEA. This is a joint effort to address some concerns that the bargaining unit brought forward. The agreement was reached on November 9th, and it is part 1 of a multi-layered approach to address these concerns. It would include adding staff to departments that did not have staff. It also includes the changing of assignments from certain departments to others, and reclassification of staff. Okay.
No, I'm in support of the memorandum. Result of, excuse me, shouldn't have done that. Usually never do. Never fails. It's a result of a collaboration and working together. And that's what we should always be striving to do. And it comes with the support of both parties. And that's what we strive to do. So my recommendation is for approval.
So it creates 2 new positions, is that what this does?
What it does is that it would allow for specifically our technology department to have secretarial staff, which in the past they did not. So that would include that creation of a position there. The employee is not a new employee. It's simply an employee that was assigned to a different department. The
Other changes include current staff, and do not include an addition of new staff. It's simply rectifying some processes that took place, and this agreement would allow for us to work alongside CSEA and ensure that everyone is assigned accordingly to their job descriptions.
Yeah, because it's such a generalized job description and it's intended that way for, you know, it's such a big district, you can shuffle around where you need be and as needed. But sometimes you also have to respect kind of the focus.
Sure.
Because it becomes a position that evolves throughout the years, especially if you've been in that position for 5, 6, 7 years, you become very specialized in that area or that program. So it's really difficult to transition someone and easily move them into a different program and have no misstep per se, you know. And with support staff, I think, just like any staff, you know, want to be respected and taken into account when changes like this are considered. And I read the breakdown. I love what you're doing, so I think that's helping our relationships and building the right processes. Thank you, Erica.
Yeah, absolutely. The process did include dozens of hours of conversation to include a transition plan, and to include the opinions of staff, both at the administration level and at the employee level.
I make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding between Ulster School District and CSEA.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is approval of provisional intern permits for 18-19 school year. Okay, item 12C is an item that we have not had in our district for a number of years. I looked back in our archives and I did not find a time in our district when we did have to implement a use of a provisional intern permit. With the teacher shortage across our state and pretty much our nation, the Commission on Teacher Credentialing has allowed for districts to request permits such as these in a way that creatively meets the teacher shortage. These 4 current teachers, if the board approves tonight their provisional intern permit, they will be allowed to remain in the classroom. All 4 of them have taught for us last year for various reasons, whether it be that they have not been able to pass certain exams, or perhaps financial reasons that did not allow them to directly enroll into an intern program last year. There is this permit that exists that the board can approve tonight that would allow for us to file on their behalf, sort of speak like an extension for this year. The district, my department and myself would work with them to help them obtain entrance into an intern credential program that would then allow them to move forward in obtaining a credential in the future. This permit would allow them to be compliant in staying in our classrooms and allow them to continue working. Questions? They're already in the classroom? They are already in the classroom.
As long subs or something?
They are working in the classroom. They were hired or retained at the beginning of the year, knowing that we had employed them last year in the hopes of their ability to enter into an intern credential program sooner in the year. At this point of the year, it does not look like either
at least 4 have been able to successfully enter into an intern program, and that's why we're going into this route. They are, in the classroom with students, and they are completing their portion of trying to get into the program. It's just that they haven't been able to successfully obtain entrance.
Are they under the wing of a master teacher?
They will be under the wing of a master teacher and a program advisor once they enter into an intern program. Currently, they're under the wing of the district and of the administrators that are at these school sites who look out for these employees. My staff and myself, we continuously contact the employees and ask them for status updates. We ask them for any type of proof of registration for the necessary exams to enter into the intern programs. We have the conversations as to, okay, you can do this, what's going on, how can we help you, and such.
This is their last step before they can no longer teach, right? I mean, in a public school.
Yes.
Yeah, so this could have been somebody that started out teaching in a public school, private school that didn't require credentials. Now they're in our system, but this is the last program. Yeah. Okay.
Any questions? Okay, how about a motion to approve the provisional intern permits?
First. I gotta make a motion first.
I move that we accept.
Did we get a motion in a second?
She's making the motion.
Okay,
I'll make the second.
okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is verbal summary of the compensation package offered to the Assistant Superintendent of Business.
Madam Chair, if I could enter this discussion on these items, 12 D, E, and F, but we have to address them separately. We have, as a district, the district has a right to contract with individuals for superintendent in their title. But if the contract is to be extended or approved for an additional year or whatever, it has to be brought before the board in two sections. The first one is a discussion of the salary in terms of the condition of the contract, and then the second piece of it is the actual approval of that contract. So the change in the law that was made a few years ago to make it clear to the public to exactly what is being asked of the board to approve. So tonight, I'm forwarding the contract renewal for Mr. Gabe Melassen and also for Erica Sanchez, but we have to treat them in 4 different sections. The first one is for Gabe, and it is approval. It's the discussion, verbal summary of the compensation package. And it is listed in the contracts before you there. And for the public's sake, I'll be happy to read that. In this case, each one is a little bit different. This one is for Gabe's. It says the assistant superintendent's salary for the 1920 school year, that's the year that we are asking to renew, will be $140,468. And the assistant superintendent shall also receive $1,750 stipend for having earned a degree of doctorate of jurisprudence. The annual salary will be based on the Hollister School District Administrative Salary Range 32, including any applicable longevity, plus percent salary increase if necessary, if received by any other cabinet level administrators for the 12-month full-time employment, and it's payable in 12 equal installments, less all applicable deductions and withholdings required by law authorized by the assistant superintendent. And the salary and the revised Hollister School District Administrative salary schedule shall be retroactive to July 1, 2019. And superintendent and the board reserve the right to increase the assistant superintendent's salary at any time, and such increase shall be effective on any date ordered by the board in accordance with Education Code 35032, or if no such date is ordered, then from the date of the duly held board meeting at which the increase would be approved. Any such increase shall be effective upon the board's action at a regularly scheduled meeting of the board. That's a summary of the salary portion of the contract that I'm requesting that we approve for the 1920 school year. Both Gabe and Erica, which I will continue that on Erica's behalf next, but they both been here multiple years, and they both are under individual contracts because of their title, including superintendent. And they have a requirement in their contract to identify to the board their desire to continue, and that requirement is by December 1st. Board has a code-granted provision to tell them that the board doesn't want them to continue all the way up to May 15th, which I happen to think is terribly unfair. Ask them to tell us they want to continue with us by December 1st, and the board's ability to tell them by May 15th with a 45-day notice of non-renewal. So I think it's only fair to ask the board for the renewal of this one, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just telling you the salary side of the compensation to meet the letter of the law. It says the board must have an opportunity to discuss the salary side of it in public before it other action to act upon the entire contract. So are we clear where we're going with this? So are there any questions regarding the salary summary compensation portion of Mr. Meliason's contract?
What was the base salary, not including the stipend?
$140,460.
Now, I have, this past year, we hired more of Gabe's services than he initially had bargained for. He spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the county was collecting, what it was not collecting. How was it, they turning it over to us? What was due? Counting, he got help with the consultant, but he still put in more. So I don't know if it should come up here or it would come up at his evaluation time, but I think he deserves some additional compensation for going what I consider above and beyond the call of duty in dealing with the county issues in the school district. Any comments?
Wow.
I have no idea what or how or anything like that, so
I
it was just.
would love to hear from Dr. Barr in a public entity. Is that ever done? I mean, I'm certainly supportive.
It's just, he just read it in the thing that the board has the option of making adjustments.
I mean, I want to pile on what Pat said, because what Gabe has been able to do while doing an excellent job, in addition to doing an excellent job for the district on, and it's still not done, by the way, the reconciling of funds over the past 10 years that will do the school district and whether we receive them or not is still a pending item. But I'd love to hear from Dr. Barr, or Liz, if you have any experience with this on.
I certainly couldn't deny the comments from each of the two board members who've spoken here, but I'm not prepared to do it tonight, and I hope I'm not offending Gabe in any way. But I think it certainly, you know, if you give me the direction that it's something that you would like to see brought back, you know, I can do that. There's no question that he's worked over and above the call of duty and just regular duties, especially with that reconciliation issue and the development fees issue. There's no question about that.
And some personnel issues that he had to get involved in as well.
Very true, very true. The moving somebody off of the salary schedule is the opening of a door that I think the board should take very serious consideration of. This placement is not just an arbitrary number, as you saw. It's his placement on range 32 and the step that he is according to the number of years. So moving to add something to a placement on a salary schedule is not something that is typically done, especially without very serious consideration and justification. I'm certainly saying that it's not without justification, but we have a salary schedule and I think we should stick to it. And the only reason this is being discussed in public is because the law now requires people with superintendent and their title to have their salary discussed in open session, and we bring it forward to you. But it is according to the step and column that he's on, the range and step that he's on. And I think we should stick with that at this point. And I think the comments certainly do not go unnoticed. There is no question about the great service that Gabe provides to the district. But at this time, this is what I'm prepared to do, is to present this package as it is and not start moving it. I think it sets a precedent for a lot of other employees, both managerial, represented and not represented. So I would like to ask the board to go simply to have this discussed. When you are prepared in the discussion, then we will go to the next item, which is approval of this contract, which requires the motion and the second and the action. But at this time, I'm not prepared to make any amendments to this whatsoever, because I think it has a lot of ramifications that could affect. But I think the comments do not go unnoticed.
My note to myself was that should it be addressed when he is having his formal performance eval? And, well, I know getting off the step and column is a problem, but as a one-time bonus.
I just think at this point in time.
But I'm just gonna leave that with you because I'm not going to be here.
Well.
But I don't want him to be missed. I mean, I think you did an outstanding job. I do appreciate the efforts and what he gave up in his family time to get the job done. Because we were definitely not paying him for his time. We were paying him for his job.
Everybody has a lot of, yeah, did a great job. You did a great job. I'm just not prepared to make any amendments to somebody on the salary schedule at this point. I think the impact and ramifications of it are broad and deep, and I certainly would not recommend it even to, I'm not going to be here either.
Well, this is what I left it with Liz.
I'm not prepared to ask.
Attention, new superintendent.
I'm not prepared to discuss it tonight, and I wouldn't recommend it being discussed in the future, and I hope you both will understand that as we go forward. It's
I just thought I'd open the door. If not, the can of worms.
I'm not walking through it. Thank you.
I understand.
Thank you.
We have 2 speaker cards.
Okay.
Jen, Chris.
Before I got into education, I was a restaurant manager, and we worked off of a profit, and we worked off of a bonus structure. We are in public service. We do not work off of a profit. We work off of a budget. We don't make money. We work hard for the children. We work hard. If, as a language arts teacher, I got a new book, I worked my butt off finding activities and things. I didn't get paid extra. When I did a new simulation in history, I worked everything out. I never got any compensation. When 89% of my kids raised their test scores up, I didn't get any compensation. This is our job. We're public servants. This isn't a business.
Cheryl?
All I can say is thank you, Dr. Barr, for having a level head about this. Gabe, I mean no disrespect to you. You have done a fabulous job, but as Jan said, we come into the public educational realm, regardless of what we do, whether we teach, do yard duty, become a superintendent or anything, to serve the children. And sometimes that is really messy, dirty work. Sometimes it takes long, long hours beyond our normal workday. I can appreciate, Pat, your recognition that Gabe has worked above and beyond for a certain time, what we typically expect a chief financial officer to do. However, as I recall board meetings in the past, one of the reasons he was elevated to the role or the position of assistant superintendent is because he had his jurisprudence, because we knew that he had the skill set to do other kinds of work for us. He was already compensated for that. And I wish that you knew enough about the work that teachers do to have said, when you saw presentations tonight about the scores going up, my goodness, I think those teachers should be rewarded. My goodness, I think that principal should be rewarded because they have higher test scores, lower suspension rates. So I've not heard anything quite like this before. We are all in this for the children. And with that, we accept the understanding that we may not achieve or be completely recognized for all of the work that we do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any others?
No.
There's no speakers?
No.
Are there
Now,
any
is
further
there any
discussion?
action?
No, wait, the next one. Any further discussion on this matter
Okay.
of the opening of the announcement to the public, the salary? Is there any further discussion? We can simply move on to the next agenda item then, which is 12.E, and that's the actual discussion and approval of the full contract of employment between the Hollister School District and Gabriel Maloyson. So, Madam Chair,
Now,
can we get a motion and a second to open this discussion on this?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, second.
okay.
Now we can have any discussion you want on the approval of the full contract.
On the copy that was included with the board's packet, for Gabe's, it needed pronoun check. It referred to shall conduct herself, agrees to devote her full time. So just a,
We were right.
I don't remember, I didn't know what
Okay.
page that was.
We'll have to,
It's like one or two.
we'll have to grammar check it. Okay?
It's
And gender check it, because we have two separate ones coming up here. All right, but I think we get the intent of it, that there's a he and there's a her coming up here, and we probably used one software for it. All right, is there any other discussions on this motion?
Anything else? Okay, is there a motion to,
There was a motion in the second.
oh, that's right.
Any other
All
discussion?
those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Okay.
Okay, that's one.
Thank you, Gabe, for letting us discuss you in public. Never easy, yeah. Kind of like Prince has no clothes or something like that. Difficult, but welcome to paradise. Yeah, when somebody gets superintendent in their title, I always say, welcome to paradise. You can be let go in 45 days. So, but you also get fully discussed in open session also. All right, the next item, 12F, is a verbal summary and discussion of compensation package offered to the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, and that's Erica Sanchez. And her information is similar, but it's slightly different, so I should read it also, because it's different steps on the salary schedule. The Assistant Superintendent's salary for the 2019-20 school year will be $143,277,000. The annual salary shall be based on the Hollister School District Administrative Salary Schedule, range 32, including any applicable longevity plus the percent salary increase, if any, received by any other cabinet level administrator for the 12-month or full employment payable in 12 equal installments, less all applicable deductions and withholdings required by law or authorized by the Assistant Superintendent. The salary and the revised Hollister School District Administrative salary shall be retroactive to July 1, 2019, and superintendent and the board reserve the right to increase the assistant superintendent's salary at any time, and in such increase shall be effective on any date ordered by the board in accordance with Ed Code Section 350232. And if no such date is ordered, then it's from the date of the duly held board meeting, at which time the increase was approved. Any such increase shall be effective upon the board action at a regularly scheduled meeting of the board. Any discussion about the compensation portion of the contract of employment between the school district and Erica Sanchez, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources? I'd just like to say same discussion. I think Erica deserves the same discussion that we had before. She does an awful lot for this district. She has gone over and above the call of duty on a number of functions and doesn't limit herself to things that sometimes HR assistant superintendents could. And so no question in my mind that the district is benefited from the employment of Erica Sanchez.
Yeah, no, I'd just like to comment that I think Erica does a wonderful job, and I believe that both she and Gabe, it wasn't just using their expertise, but they took on additional duties, which is, nobody ever expected, Gabe to have to reconcile 10 years worth of work that's not in his job description. And for Erica, her work on some of the sensitive personnel issues we've had and the work that you had to do, that was, to me, not in her job description, were additional duties. And it is a shame, but I'm glad to hear that we don't necessarily always have to bargain when additional duties are assigned, but I'm very glad to have you part of the district.
I think the district is, if she accepts the contract, fortunate to keep her for another 2 years at least.
I would, if there is no further discussion, this is simply the discussion side. So if there is no further discussion, I'll be happy to move to item 12G.
And is there a motion to approve the employment agreement with the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources?
So I'll make the motion that we
have to discuss it.
discuss it.
So we have done the discussion of the salary.
Right.
Now we have to place a motion on the table for the approval of the contract with a second, and then we can discuss it.
Okay, so I'll make the motion to approve her contract and the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources contract.
Second. Okay.
Thank you. Now now is there any discussion regarding that motion? Hearing none, call for the vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay.
Thank the two of you, and I want to thank the audience for letting us work in public. It's not easy. Anyway,
Okay.
all right.
Number 13 on the agenda is board member reports.
So, if you're asking me, I haven't really attended anything recently, but the dialogue that I'm getting from parents and other concerned parties about that traffic issue is overwhelming. And so I'm glad that we're addressing it. And I just, as part of my board member report, I have a question. Is anybody going to the CSBA stuff
I was
in?
gonna ask that too.
Yeah,
Is anybody scheduled to Sue's?
I am not going in December.
Our 3 new.
That's this week, isn't it?
Starts on Wednesday.
Thursday.
We,
Thursday.
Tomorrow.
Oh, it's tomorrow already?
Well, for the newbies, it starts tomorrow.
Okay.
yeah, new board orientation is tomorrow. The CSB conference continues on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And we requested placements in consideration of the newly elected board members. And they have accepted the invitation, which is absolutely what they should do, in my opinion. And they will be there, all starting tomorrow, I guess. And some can stay for much of it, some can stay for only some of it, but whatever they can do, I think is in the right direction for their taking their new positions as school board members, starting in another week and a half. So thank you guys for signing up for that, traveling, and those of you who are staying overnight, that's a commitment. You don't get paid any extra, but it's a commitment, it's extra duty, but. So thank you for signing up. And Jesus, thank you very much for spearheading all the logistics of sending people to a conference in San Francisco. Okay. And as I said, this is all about next meeting. Is there already-
Board report.
Board report.
Nothing to report. It's been a pleasure serving you.
If I did, I forgot.
I hope that applause was heard. I guess it was heard because it was an applause. I think, as I said, it's been a pleasure serving. I hope you all heard that.
And I think that, I'm gonna keep talking. I think that one of the reasons I ran for board member in the first place was because I taught for so long. And it was time for me to move on from the classroom, and I learned a lot by being a board member because I learned to see the other side of the story as teachers. So thank you very much for everything, for being part of your team, and hope to see you around town.
Absolutely.
We hope that we'll be back on December
18th.
Hey, what?
Just to say goodbye.
No work. We just want to say thank you in a little bit more
Is there
formal way.
Champagne
I would probably save this for the 18th, but just in case, those of you who don't know, I didn't know when I spoke with this board about helping them be in the interim, and I met Elsa, and I just never put 2 and 2 together, but I found out a couple of weeks later that her sister is Asinette Rodriguez Quaid, who was my right arm educational officer for years and years as a county superintendent of schools, somebody I revere. He's just one of the dearest, sweetest people I've ever had work for me and with me, and we still maintain a very close relationship, she and her husband Bob. And then one day they all 3 walked in and I just fell down. I had no idea they were sisters, but spectacular family, and they've done a lot for this community. I was even at her dad's funeral many years ago. So it's a great family, and we thank you. But we'll say more.
I enjoyed being a board member. I learned a lot. I think as a teacher, I saw the other side as well, and I know that sometimes teachers don't get the amount of pay that they deserve or, but this school district, the teachers
I think worked very well with the school board and the district office in getting over our bumps and financial messes that were there for a while. So thank you very much.
We'll save more for the 18th. That's it. Any other board reports? Did you or?
No, I'm good. Go on to, future agenda items.
So, I would like to request, and I'm gonna rely on Dr. Barr to say, it's too early or whatever, but, I would like a, report on SPED from an educator's point of view, where we are, where we're going, as far as you see it. Just because I failed to mention, the other thing I got a call is a lot on the special education part of it, but just general direction where we're going. I would like to get a comprehensive report on the test scores and the specific action items that we need to take to fix the most obvious problems. I don't get any intellectual satisfaction looking at the summary data that we have and saying, okay, I should be happy with this, or are we happy with it? And, and I'm gonna say, like on RO Hardin, what are those specific things that we're doing? Is bringing in an additional, math coach, is that going to solve the problem? Is it too early to do that? Should we wait for the full-time superintendent? But that's our job is to address those issues. And then the third thing was, should we look at a comprehensive report on exactly who our teachers are? Meaning, if we have 560 teachers, how many of them are full-blown credentialed teachers? How many are like what we just approved and in between? Because I don't have a real good feeling. I know it's been a challenge hiring, but do we have holes to fill with credentialed teachers?
And even with subs, finding subs, what are some of the solutions to kind of figure that out as well?
So out of all these three things, what should we put on a future agenda item?
Brainstorming session.
What's that?
A brainstorming session to discuss each of those things you have on the table.
Are you prepared to do that?
Well, what I would propose, you asked for my opinion, so I'll give it to you. I think that we should bring up each of those issues at the next board meeting. There's going to be several new board members on the board, and board direction, board actions, board consensus to discuss things, board agreement to discuss things. This requires a consensus of the board. And so you asked me if it's premature, and you're spot on, I believe, Rob, because I think that what we should do is reopen these areas on the 18th and see if we have a consensus from the board that they are interested in having these points. There's not a bad one on my opinion. When they would come forward would be, dependent on how fast we can make a report, or maybe when the test scores come in, or how quickly, like Erica could gather all the information about the specific qualifications of teachers, credentials, and so forth. The SPED report, we have commissioned a special ed report. It has been completed, and it shows a lot of needs for the program. I think that's going to require a full discussion on the behalf of the board, but all of these will occur on or after December 18th. They're not going to occur tonight, but because that board is going to have a different composition than the membership of this current board, I think it's that we take that discussion up with that board on the 18th or even in the January meeting about lining up their goals. You're gonna have a new superintendent. You're gonna have what I call a new board, it appears. And there's gonna be a great opportunity, in my opinion, for a new superintendent and a board that's constructed of several new members on the board to discuss where they want to go with this district. And these are three highly important areas. There might be more. There might come an issue that trumps all of these. But these are three, I think tonight was telling also. I agree with you. We see summaries of scores, and we're not sure why, where, or different things like that. I think a more comprehensive outlay of all the test scores, where they've been, where they are going, what are we doing? Jennifer was mentioning some of them tonight, digging down, all that stuff. Each of those are going to take a significant period of time, take a couple of hours each at least. The fully qualified credentialed teachers is not as difficult of a point to bring forward. Every district in the state has provisionally credentialed teachers. The SPED report, I think, is going to take quite a bit more time, and it's going to take quite a bit more analysis and some changes in the leadership, those are all up for discussion. So I think bottom line, 2 answers, great points. Let's wait and discuss them on the 18th. That's my answer.
So no action items for her for now?
No, I think we're gonna have 3 or 4 more school reports. I think we're not all the way through the schools. We're only 6 schools into the.
We are. How many would you like next time? 2, 3, or 4? We have 4 left.
2. There's a lot on that. Yeah, maybe 1.
2. I got 2.
3 and 4, with all due respect to the great reports. I was just joking. It's got another month delayed. No, I think 2 at maximum. And the principals did a good job today of being succinct in their reports. So, but 18th is a very large meeting. It's it's the swearing in of new board members, the thanking of the previous board members, the reorganization meeting, the setting of the making of the officers, the setting of the dates and times and places, all those things. So it's a pretty comprehensive meeting, and I wouldn't want to get bogged down in a couple of hour discussion on one matter of that evening. We're letting new board members find their feet. I don't think they're going to need much time to do that, but
I think a board retreat with the new superintendent and the new board coming together and building that rapport as soon as possible, I think would be ideal. Because that's how we're really gonna get to know what our concerns are individually. And like Rob has brought 3 great things to discuss. And I think that, we can enlighten each other in kind of where we're coming from and where direction we want to go as a team. So I think that would be the first step, and then we can go from there.
Couldn't agree more. I hope the new members of the board will see see and understand the greatness of that idea.
We do.
Okay, so next item is announcements and reminders.
I think we've made them all.
Okay.
I don't think there are any new announcements. Anything that I've forgotten? Anybody wants to remind me of something I've forgotten? It won't be the first time. Go ahead.
Nor the last.
JT.
We also have the 100% design plans coming back to the board in December.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. That has to be submitted to the DSA. That'll be on the agenda. And we mentioned that at last board meeting, that it would be brought back at the December meeting.
Yes.
It went from 70%, it'll go from 70% to 100% design.
So just, because I know Diane had mentioned in this transitional process with the candidates and whatnot, the acting president will no longer be present on the board. So then just logistically, what happens is the clerk kind of steps into that position until we have the 18th board meeting to then officially select our new president, new clerk. So they had tonight just requested in that transitional phase, just for the lead going into this phase of interviews, that I'm kind of designated as the hostess.
Yeah, because this is how it's dictated by law. Yeah, if you have to have a meeting before your reorganization meeting, but after the date of the beginning date of the.
For full disclosure, I didn't, you know. I just wanted to put it out there.
Well, and I also have had it tough, just for the public sake of this, it's hard to have two concurrent railroads going down the track at the same time. One of them is a board election and the other one is a superintendent search. And you're trying to, you know, it would be nice if they were one behind the other and not running concurrently, but they are running concurrently. And so I think the search consultants have done a great job of attracting a large number of good candidates. Paper screening has been done. Application narrowing down has been completed, and a field of what we believe are qualified candidates will be forwarded to the board starting on December 7th. I've explained this, but that will be the first day of the new board, if we call it such. And I did say this because until that 7th, the board elects, if we should call them such, can't be bound to confidentiality. And the board has promised the search consultants confidentiality to all their candidates, not showing anybody other than elected officials those, and myself, those applications. So, but what we do want to do is the search consultants want to confer with board member elects to make sure that they know the dates and the times and the places and everything. They have to be there. The only thing they won't be entitled to is the actual applications themselves until the 7th, because there is a promise, bailiffs of confidentiality to those candidates. And you can't bind a person who's not an elected official to that confidentiality legally. So I've talked with everybody. I think everybody's on board. The board elects.
What time is it exactly?
Pardon me?
On the 7th, what time?
I think it's at 3 o'clock. 3
or 3:30
here?
Yeah. We will-
Location is to be determined.
No, it's
still.
going to be determined because, again, we discussed the confidentiality of it. If it's held at the district office, there's not much confidentiality.
Right.
You got to put yourself in the mind of one of those candidates.
Sure.
That hasn't yet informed their board that they're a candidate, and they don't want to unless they're an absolute finalist.
Do we have a time schedule for the 8th?
Diane Siri will be contacting the three of you to give you all of the logistics.
Okay, well, because, my grandson's severely autistic and my daughter's having surgery, so I just kind of need to get
Yeah,
some
'cause
time.
there's four, well, Saturday would be an all day.
Okay.
So the 7th, the 8th, and then the following Friday, Saturday.
Okay.
And both Saturdays are pretty much all day.
Okay. That's all I need to know.
It's a Friday at 3, late
Okay.
afternoon and early evening,
Okay.
Yeah,
and Saturday will be a morning.
it's an all day event.
I just
Saturday.
had one more question. As far as when we are going to be interviewing them, are there going to be questions provided for us, or do you want us to write our
That's
own
part of what
questions?
you're gonna get even as a board elect. You're gonna get the times, the places, and the proposed questions, and you're gonna be allowed to add questions that you feel
Yes,
are important
they're
to
gonna
it.
be reaching out with you with all that stuff. So, for now, it's 3 to 9 for the 7th.
Okay.
And then the 8th is scheduled from 8 to 5.
8 to 5, okay.
Yeah, and then the 14th is 4:30 to 7.
Okay.
And then Saturday, 8:30 to 4. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You'll get all that information from either Dr. Siri or Dr. Horace.
Okay, sounds perfect.
Any other questions, Madam Chair?
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
I'll see you soon. As far as the new superintendent, so far, no problems. I just wanted to make sure you had input on the project.
That's okay.
To get it. You know, as far as those final six, it only started again. You know what I mean? We don't have to sit over. I mean, I don't, yeah, I was gonna say, I'm not.
I still want to be.
I agree that the process needs to get started. This is what Dr. Day started.
You want to go home? Go home. I let you go home. Okay, you're talking, I'm listening. So you know, I'm sure you can make it.
Oh, that's right.
No, she hasn't had any babies yet.
In your office?
Oh, yeah.
I would just. Oh, yeah, that's the only reason I would visit. I'm just like, do you? No, I don't want to have it. She has contacted me several times.
That's good.
You and I are a lot alike, she said. Oh, wow, that's great. All right. I tell parents. All right.
I'll just sit here.
Hi, Rob. Thank you. Are you here tomorrow? I'm here. You're gonna call. You're gonna tell us in the morning. If you have any questions, stop by. Okay. Well, we are gonna be off-site. Okay. Not moving. Good job. Yeah, yes.
I know.